Okay. So it looks like we have a full complement, and it's past 7:30, so I think we can bring the meeting to order. Actually, I have this thing here. This is be pretty handy for this. It's a pretty big gavel. Been waiting to use this for years for a particular situation, hasn't arisen yet. So, John, are you okay?
We're good.
Mike, Beth, you guys ready to go?
Yes.
Ready?
Okay. So the August meeting of the Greenwich Township Land Use Board is called to order. Please read the public notice.
This is the regular meeting of the Land Use Board of the Township of Greenwich. Adequate notice of this meeting has been given in accordance to the Open Publics Meeting Act, and that a notice was published in the Star Gazette and Express Times newspaper. Notice was posted on the municipal bulletin board in the Township Administration Building in Greenwich Township, New Jersey, and notice was filed with the Township Clerk.
Perfect. And then the rules for virtual meetings.
Virtual meeting Land Use Board rules and procedures. Number 1, Zoom waiting room will be turned on upon entry. All participants will enter through a virtual waiting room. The board secretary will be the meeting moderator and will admit each individual. Please use your first and last name as your username. The board secretary will not admit anyone using an inappropriate pseudonym screen name. Note, if joining the meeting after it has started, there will be a delay being admitted since the moderator will be handling multiple tasks. Please be patient. Number 2, to prevent background noise and ensure clear audio, most participants will remain muted during the meeting. To be recognized by the chairperson to speak, use the raise hand option located in the participants dialog box. The chairperson and moderators will unmute as needed. You can mute yourself, but you cannot unmute yourself. You will need to use the raise hand option again to alert the chairperson that you wish to be unmuted.
Someone's got to mute their dog.
That's Mike.
That would be me.
Number 3, you are encouraged to use your device's camera and provide a video feed for the best meeting experience. Number 4, Greenwich Township reserves the right to remove any participant that are deemed to be disrupting the meeting. This includes any inappropriate audio or video. Anyone removed from the meeting will not be readmitted. Number 5, in the event the meeting has technical difficulties and ends abnormally, we will attempt to restart the meeting. All required participants should try to reconnect using the original meeting link. All optional participants may also attempt to reconnect. If within 20 minutes of the meeting ending abnormally, a reset is not successful, the meeting will be ended and rescheduled, if necessary. Information concerning rescheduling will be posted on the Township website, www.greenwichtownship.org. Number 6, for more information on how to use Zoom, visit www.zoom.com.
Awesome. Mike, I muted you because somebody said that was your dog, so.
It was my dog, but I unmuted myself. The dog,
Okay.
The loud one is outside now.
All right. We won't eject you from the meeting yet because you need to introduce Joe first.
Yes, I do.
No,
Thanks.
You shouldn't have been able to unmute yourself. That's weird. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, roll call.
Paul Beam, Class 1.
Here.
Joseph Susalio, Class 2.
Here.
Frank Marchetta, Class 3.
Here.
Ray Buckwalter, Class 4.
Here.
Bruce Williams, Class 4.
Here.
Kathy Colling, Class 4.
She's actually on hold and she can't get in. She's been on hold for 15 minutes. She's on the phone because her computer's not working. So I text you, Frank.
Yeah, I saw that, Dawn Marie. I was going to wait to address you on the meeting. I don't see her in the waiting room. There's really nothing I can do. Joe Fiamma was able to get in through the phone. I think there's more than one phone number on the website.
Why can you text her so I don't have to be the in-between person? And
I don't have her. She'd have to text me first. I don't have her number.
Hold on. Susanna, can you text her?
I can email her.
Email her, please.
Okay.
Sorry for the interruption.
And Frank, can you unmute Mike Stanzione, who's now on, he's the applicant's attorney on the Home Depot, and also Duddy Taub, I think, represents the landlord.
Yeah, but let's get through the roll call first.
Okay.
Gary Hill, Class 4. Yeah, he emailed that he was going to be absent today.
Okay.
Don Marie Condas, Class 4.
Here.
Mark Scuderi, Class 4.
Here.
Joseph Fiamma, Alternate 1.
Here.
Jeremy Blunt, Alternate 2. Bill Cognac, alternate 3.
Here.
Pam Peslis, alternate 4.
Here.
Perfect.
All right, so Duddy Taub is probably muting himself because I unmuted and he's staying mute. So,
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, right now I'm on mute.
okay.
Okay. So you're controlling it. So anybody, if you know you have background noise and you're not speaking, just mute yourself, and then we don't have to try to figure out which one of the little boxes is the source of the noise. That's very helpful.
Right, and Duddy or anyone else, don't feel like you have to be unmuted. I just wanted to make sure you weren't locked out. If you want to mute yourself, or you want to even, turn your video off, that's your business. The only people that will need to have video on and voice on, obviously, are witnesses.
Okay. Mike, you wanted to introduce Joe? Why don't you go ahead and do that now?
Yeah, thanks for a few seconds here, folks. There's a fellow, he's on the middle of my screen anyway, by the name of Joe Vooch. He's a recent engineer that's been brought on with my office. He's making the rounds with me, and just figured get him. He'll start getting a feel for the lay of the land, and obviously our municipal clients. He's got a lot of PE, a lot of municipal experience. So, I'm not going anywhere, but just in case you need somebody at the office, or if I'm in a bind with a meeting, you might run into deal with Joe. So just wanted to introduce him to the Greenwich Land Use Board.
Welcome aboard, Joe.
Thank you.
It's good to see you. Okay. We have minutes from the July 9th meeting. So first thing on the agenda is to approve the minutes. Does anybody have any comments regarding the minutes? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve them.
I'll make a motion.
Thanks, Mark. We have a motion and a second.
Second.
Thanks, Jeremy. I guess we better do a roll call vote.
Yeah, if you
Little
would,
hard to-
Ray, appreciate it.
Bruce Williams,
Yes.
Paul Bean,
Yes.
Joseph Chitello,
Yes.
Anne Marie Konda,
Yes.
Mark Scuderi,
Yes.
Ray Buckwalter,
Yes.
Joseph Fiamma,
Yes.
Jeremy Blunt,
Yes.
Mark Scuderi,
Yes.
and Kathy Cullen. I don't think she's in yet, right?
I just got in, but I have no idea what you're voting on. Sorry.
Minutes from July 9th.
Oh, I'm okay with those.
I'll take that as a yes.
I wasn't called. I wasn't called.
Oh. And I'm gonna put it down as well.
And also, did you call some people that weren't at that meeting, Susanna?
Bill Cognac wasn't there and Pam Peslis, so I didn't call them.
So I will abstain.
I'll vote yes. You
Okay.
can call me.
Frank Marchetta, you're yes, okay.
All right, very good, thank you. The next order of business, we have 2 resolutions for adoption. Both of these are the Marcin Kostler, I'm gonna probably not pronounce that right, and Jose Gonzalez certifications for these properties with, what is it, John, previously,
That lawfully created,
Lawfully
pre-existing
created, thank you.
non-conforming uses.
so both of the resolutions have been sent out. Now, I saw late today, there was some question about escrow on these, but I think it's minor, John. This is just, has to be transferred from one to the other. Is
I'll
that
put it
correct?
this way, we're gonna need the applicant's consent to do that, so my suggestion is that the board vote to adopt these, but tell Susanna not to sign these until the escrow has been straightened out, just to make sure. Because once these are signed and sent out, then you can kiss the money goodbye.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, I think it's just a transfer from one account to the other,
Yeah,
correct?
but you're not allowed to transfer an escrow account unless the applicant consents. And in light of some of the-
Understood. Understood. Got it. Okay. So everybody should have heard that. So we'll go ahead and I'll ask can we do both of these at the same time, John? A and B?
I just want to see if they're the same voters. No,
Ah,
there's
good
different,
point.
different voters. So you
All
gotta
right, we'll
take,
do them separately because okay, good
yeah,
point.
22002 is C, is a corrected resolution. And that's your first one up.
We already adopted that. We're just adopting it again, correct?
You're adopting a corrected one, right? We
Right.
found out that the information that the applicant's attorney had given was incorrect. So we're correcting that information. And we explain that in a footnote on page 2.
Yeah, for anybody on the board, if you don't remember, they just moved the cheese in terms of what date the actual zoning went into effect. So it didn't change anything in this application. It's just a correction, really. All right, so I'll ask for a motion to adopt 2020-02C.
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Bruce made a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
I'm sorry, who's got that? Raise your hand.
I did it first.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Yep.
I just want to make sure Susanna can capture that stuff. It's hard to hear when,
Yeah.
so we need a roll call vote.
Yep.
Paul Beam,
Yes.
Joseph Chitello,
Yes.
Frank Marchetta,
Yes.
Ray Buckwalter,
Yes.
Bruce Williams,
Yes.
Don Marie Condas,
Yes.
Joseph Fiamma,
Yes.
and Jeremy Blunt.
Yes.
Motion carries. Good. The next one is just the second property. This was the 551, 555 North Main Street property. So I need a motion to adopt that resolution and a
This
second.
one's resolution 2020-03. This
Yep,
is the
thank you.
third draft dated July 23.
I need a motion and a second.
I'll make the motion.
Thanks, Jeremy. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Paul, thank you. I got to tease this out of you guys tonight. Everybody's like slow on the trigger. All right, roll call vote, please.
Paul Beam,
Yes.
Joseph Chitello,
Yes.
Frank Marchetta,
Yes.
Ray Buckwalter,
Yes.
Bruce Williams,
Yes.
Jeremy Blunt,
Yes.
Don Marie Condas.
Yes.
Motion carries. Very good. Susanna, it just occurred to me to ask, just to make sure, we are recording, correct?
We are, yes.
Okay, perfect. It doesn't show that on my screen, and I just thought, well, I just wanted to make sure.
Mhm.
I figured you had it covered, but okay. So tonight's business, we have a couple of applications. We have the Phillipsburg Greenwich LLC, care of Madison Properties. I think this is also, we've been calling it the Ross application. It's the old Staples building. So can the applicant, the people that are with the applicant, just kind of wave your hand so we can see who you are very quickly? And then, so I don't know who's speaking on your behalf. Are you ready to proceed?
We are ready to proceed.
Michael, good to see
Yeah.
you.
Good to see you.
So John, do you want to swear these guys in?
Yeah,
And
so Mike, can you identify who your witnesses are by name and have them wave their hands so like we can see them?
Sure. We have Mike Textoris
Mike,
from
there
Enclave
you go.
Engineering. We have Art Bernard, our planner from Art
Art,
Bernard
wave your hand.
Associates. Art, wave your hand. He's down on the bottom left of the
Yeah, I
grid.
see him, but I don't know if he can hear us.
Art, can you hear us? Give us a thumbs up. Your audio is
Art, you're muted.
Yeah, he's.
Oh, there we go.
Thumbs
I
up.
unmuted him.
Okay. And John Menino is our architect. And Penny Taub is our, on behalf of the applicant.
perfect.
Okay, so is Mr. Taub going to be testifying or is he here just to listen?
Just to listen, if there's any questions, he can answer them.
All right, tell you what, why don't we get him sworn also? So let's get Textoris, Bernard, Menino, Taub, McManus, and Finelli. Everyone raise their right hand. And Mike and Beth, you have to unmute yourselves so I can hear you.
I got him. Mike, there you go.
Okay, Does everyone swear the testimony they're going to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
I do.
I do.
Yes.
Okay, so for the record, let's have all of the applicants' experts identify themselves, even though we already know your name, and give your relationship to the applicant and/or the board for Finelli and McManus, just because we're recording, and if any members of the public are listening or watching, so everyone knows who's who. So Mike Textoris, you're the applicant's engineering expert?
That is correct.
Okay. Art Bernard,
Yes, I'm the applicant's planner.
okay. John Menino,
Yes, I'm the applicant's architect.
and Peter Tab, you're the applicant's representative. Is that, Penny Tab, you're the applicant's representative?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Kennelly
The board engineer.
and McManus.
Elizabeth McManus, board planner.
Okay. Mike, your application.
So, good evening, members of the board. My name is Michael Ogrodnik. I'm an attorney at Savo, Shaw, Gillespie, Ogrodnik, and Fisher. Of course, I serve as the attorney for the applicant, Phillips Greenwich LLC, care of Madison Properties USA LLC. Tonight, we're here on an application for Block 26, Lot 33.01, seeking minor site plan approval with variances for the commercial property located in the B2 zoning district on a lot size of approximately 50 acres. The application is submitted in support of a new tenant looking to operate a Ross Dress for Less store, which is at the location of the Staples store, which has been vacant for some time. Ross Dress for Less, just to give you a little background on them, they're a discount department store. They're out of California. It's interestingly the largest off-price retailer in the U.S. They have 1,483 stores in 37 states, but they actually have very little. They actually have no presence in New England, New York, and New Jersey. They're just moving into these territories. Ross is essentially think of Marshalls and TJ Maxx. They're a joint company called Marmax. They're been described in publications as kind of a higher end retailer, somewhere between them and more of the higher end stores. So it's a company that it targets more of the middle income households. It's a company that employs 77,800 people, store managers, checkout assistants, stock takers, accountants, marketers, HR, etc. Company employs 77% women and 72% minorities. The heart of this application is basically a rehab of the Staples store. It's the anchor tenant. I'm sure you're all familiar with that site pretty well. Site's been developed for a number of years. It's been a successful retail big box location, although we have had Staples vacancy for some time. This application essentially proposes a complete facade change with new signage. We're proposing some very minor site plan alterations, including relocation, reconfiguration of the loading area in the back, handicap access route, trash compaction area, in addition to various floor plan and interior improvements necessary for the Ross store. Phillipsburg Greenwich LLC, the applicant, we're requesting D variance relief for the following sections of the zoning code. Number one is maximum building height under section 16.8-186G, whereas 35 feet is permitted in the zone and 42 feet is proposed on the new facade parapets, which is a D6 height variance. We also have a couple of C bulk variances, permanent wall signs. There's one permanent wall sign per tenant allowed, and this application proposes 7 signs, which is in violation of 16.11-28B. This allows for some signage on the side of the building facing the other roadway in addition to the front facade. We also request variation from 1611.28B2, which is your ordinance that's entitled Permanent Wall Signs, which requires that the aggregate size allowed for all signs on the lot not exceed 4% of the front facade of the principal building. We're seeking 7 signs with a total of 442 square feet, whereas 172 square feet are permitted. Again, this is includes the sign on the side of the building. Tonight, as Mr. Drill had indicated, we have our engineer, Mike Textoris from Van Cleef Engineering, John Menino from Sermonera Architects, Art Bernard, a professional planner, and Penny Taub on behalf of the applicant. Proof of notice has been submitted to the board secretary consistent with the municipal land use law. And unless there are any legal questions, I would ask that we introduce Mike Textoris to briefly go over the existing conditions and the proposed conditions. Then we'll
Before
move
you
to
do
our
that,
architect.
I just want to have the notice jurisdictionally recognized. So I reviewed the form of the notice and it is satisfactory. And I'm going to ask Susanna, did you review the stamped certified receipts against the tax assessor's list?
I did.
And was everything in order?
It was.
Mike deemed this complete today, correct?
Yes, I did.
So
This was
my
deemed
advice
complete
to
earlier.
the chair is that the board has procedural jurisdiction because the notice is in order and a completeness determination was made. So if the chair makes a ruling on behalf of the board, if anyone disagrees with him, they can overrule him on a majority vote. Ray, what's your ruling?
The application's complete and we can proceed.
Go ahead, Mike.
So I'd first like to introduce Mike Textoris, who's our civil engineer. He's also a licensed planner, but we have Art Bernard as our provided planning testimony. Mike, can you give the benefit of your educational and professional licenses?
Certainly. Again, my name is Michael Textoris. I'm a professional engineer and planner licensed in the state of New Jersey. I'm with the firm Van Cleef Engineering Associates. I'm a 1986 graduate of the New Jersey Institute of Technology. I have over 40 years experience in the field of civil engineering, land use and construction. And I've been testifying as an expert witness in front of planning and zoning boards throughout New Jersey for the past 30 years.
Mr. Chairman, we'd ask that he be accepted as a professional civil engineer.
Yes, we'll accept Mr. Textoris as a professional engineer. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Mike, you can just narrate your explanation of the site plan, the existing and proposed conditions.
Okay. Basically, I'm going to just fill in the gaps with regards to Mike's previous testimony regarding the zoning, the area, the block and lot numbers. Just for the record, the property has 2 frontages, one along New Jersey State Highway Route 22, and the second on New Brunswick Avenue, which actually bisects this site into 2. There's 2 separate retail malls, and New Brunswick Avenue bisects them. Adjoining uses to the south is Interstate 78. To the north are similar commercial uses, and to the east are vacant lands. The site today contains a variety of retail uses, as well as parking for approximately 1,570 vehicles, and contains numerous loading area and truck docks located in the rear of the center. The focus of this application this evening, as Michael stated, is the vacant Staples unit, which is located just south of New Brunswick Avenue and north of the vacant Best Buys unit. The applicant is proposing to convert this space in order to house a Ross Dress for Less retail store. Major modifications are proposed to the interior of the space, which is approximately 20,000 square feet. Also, other modifications to the exterior of the structure. The architect will discuss the interior layout of the building but also there's going to be an addition of a front facade and overhang, which is going to be 42 feet in height, the reason for the request for a variance relief. And this facade will project 15 feet from the existing building face. There are additional numerous wall signs located on both the front and side of the building. Again, the architect will discuss about these items in a little more detail during his testimony. Additional modifications to the exterior of the site is the establishment of a compliant ADA route from the existing handicap parking spaces located west of the building to the front door of the facility. Modifications to the dumpster and trash compaction areas, which are located in the rear building, have also been proposed, and this is in order to better accommodate the new tenant, Ross Dress for Less. With regards to comments received from the engineer, there were not many. They're all contained in Mr. Finelli's August 13th, 2020 letter. If you look at page 3, there are 5 comments that Mr. Finelli has made. I'd like to just address the first comment. Mr. Finelli questions the possible issues with deliveries and trash removal. I can assure the board that Madison Properties, who oversees this site, they will coordinate deliveries and trash removal with the tenant and the refuge hauling company so that no issues or conflicts will exist. There was a request for additional information regarding the ADA ramp. That was all placed on the revised plan.
Item 3.
Item 3. I'm looking for Mr. Finelli's letter.
The 2 proposed bollards indicated on the dumpster pad enclosure detail shall be illustrated on the proposed site improvement plan for consistency of the plan and detail to assure they are installed during construction.
Yes, we will revise our plan to show those 2 bollards.
So you're proposing that should be a condition imposed if there's an approval?
Yes. Again, the architect will testify to the sign issues. And item 5 regarding escrows, the applicant agrees to that condition. That's all I have.
Does anybody from the board have any questions for Mike?
No.
I don't hear any, so we can, I guess, proceed to your, do we need to ask the public, or can we do that when
Yeah.
we're done, John?
No,
Do you
no,
wanna do-
witness by witness, yep.
Witness by witness, okay. Well, we need to know if there's anyone from the public here.
Yeah, Bill and Doris.
Can you unmute Bill and Doris? so
Yeah,
we
can you unmute them and we'll see if they have any
Well,
questions?
let me just call, I don't know all these people, so you're gonna have to tell me.
Well, we know Bill and Doris. They show up
Yeah,
at most of the meetings.
I'll unmute them, but there's Matt Gabor.
Well, put it this way, I think you're gonna have to unmute them and ask them who they are. It's the only
Yeah,
way-
just unmute everybody, Frank, and we'll see who they are and if they have any questions.
All right.
Bill and Doris have no questions.
Thank you, Bill and Doris. I presume Art Bernard, oh, now he's unmuted. Does
Art
anybody
Bernard is
else?
their expert. He's not
Say
with the
again?
public. Art Bernard is their expert. He's not with the public. So is there anyone else
Oh,
with the
okay.
public?
I thought we had video on all the experts. Sorry.
There's certain people I'm trying to unmute and they're not unmuting, so.
Which means they probably muted themselves.
No questions.
Okay, who's talking?
Matt Gabor.
Okay, Matt DeVore, can you spell your last name and give me your address?
He's muted at the moment. There he is.
He's unmuted.
Yeah, Gabor,
Okay, and what's your address?
411 North Ave West.
Okay, and I guess you can ask questions without video, but if you're going to want to make a statement later, I'm going to have to swear you in. You're going to have to turn your video on. But for questions, I guess you can keep your video off if you want.
Yeah, no questions.
Oh, okay.
So, John, I just want to say, if anybody is in the public and wants to make a statement or ask a question, either raise your hand using the function within Zoom or send me a chat. Because I'm trying to unmute everybody. I don't know where the issue is, if it's on our end or your end.
All right, and can I just do one more thing, Ray, just so I don't forget? Can we ask Bill and Doris to unmute, just to give me your address for the record? Even though
Sure.
you don't have a question now?
Our address is 13 Barn Swallow Court.
Okay, and how do you spell your last name?
G is in George, Ullion.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Ray, so apparently there's no questions from the public.
Very good. So
No.
going forward, if anyone from the public has questions, you can stay muted if you prefer. Just as Frank said, use the raise your hand function, and then we'll make sure to call on you. Okay, we can move on to the next witness.
Okay, our next witness is John Menino from Sermonera Architects. He's going to explain, and I would ask John, can you share your screen with the architectural drawings, which are just for the record.
Get him qualified first, please.
Sure. John, can you give the board the benefit of your experience as a professional architect and affirm that your licenses in New Jersey are current and active?
Yes, so my name is John Menino. I'm a principal architect with Sermonera Architect, located in Hillsborough, New Jersey. I hold an active license in New Jersey as well as surrounding states. I've been in the field of architecture for nearly 20 years, and I'm a graduate of Philadelphia University.
Thanks, John. Can I ask you to bring up and share your
One
screen?
second, please. Ray, I'm going to have to make him a co-host, all right? Because he can't share otherwise.
I know,
Yeah,
but
that's fine.
Ray has to accept his qualifications on behalf of the board first. Ray, do you accept his qualifications as an
Yes, I do.
architect?
Thank you, John.
All right, John, I'm going to make you co-host.
So just for the record, as we had submitted and has been circulated, we have 4 exhibits for tonight. A1 and A2 are the architectural drawings, and A3 and A4, A1 and A2 are the engineering drawings, and A3 and A4 are the architectural drawings. So John, go ahead and explain the floor plan and then move on to the facade.
Sure. Is everyone able to see the PDF image on?
Yeah, we see A3 up on the screen for the record.
Yes, it's Exhibit A3 dated August 13, 2020. Okay. I'm going to try to zoom in here a little bit.
And just for the record, A3, what's it say in the title block? What drawing is this?
Yes, this is the overall floor plan, sheet A1. This is what was submitted as part of the application.
Yep.
Okay. So I zoomed in here a little bit. So this is representative of the proposed floor plan fit out for the Ross Dress for Less within the current vacant Staples space. It consists of about 20,000 square feet. 16,000 square feet would be the sales floor area where all the racking and shelving and display would be. And about 2,000 square feet encompasses the rear area where we're reconstructing fitting rooms, toilet rooms, support spaces, as well as their stock shipping delivering area. I'll start in the back of the building and work my way forward just to highlight on some of the improvements that Michael Textoris had touched on. In the back of the space, currently there's a single loading dock, which will remain. And there is a platform, and currently there's an adjacent dumpster. One dumpster is insufficient for this proposed use. We're proposing to add a compactor here, just for the general nature of the space, that they'll have a need for that. And we're relocating the dumpster in order to provide space for that compactor. The flow and everything back here still works. Michael had kind of taken a look at that. And as far as frequency of deliveries and refuge pickup, again, as Michael had mentioned, that would be Madison Properties would work with the tenant in ensuring that all is met. On the side of the building facing New Brunswick, there's a small little revision. There's a man door that needs to be relocated a few feet. Nothing really major. There's an existing sidewalk that will accommodate the adjustment. So nothing really, too major there. The bulk of the work that is proposed, as Michael had mentioned, is at the front entry into the space. Currently, the Staples is a very flat facade, not much undulation, both in plan or vertically. In this plan view, you can see the extent of the portico or covered entry area that is being proposed. As Michael mentioned, projects approximately 15 feet from the building facade. And it is, almost the full width of the lease space. It does fall short of the demising wall and the corner of the building by approximately 10 feet or so. There is some improvements that need to be done with the curbing, with the ADA access to get to our space. The current location is shown in this approximate area. However, you can see with the proposed improvements, there would be a conflict. So we have adjusted the location of that ADA access point, which I believe Michael had shown on his site plan that has been submitted to the board. That really is the extent of the improvements in floor plan view. Does anyone have any questions regarding the floor plan before I move on to the elevations?
I don't think any of the floor plan changes require any relief from the board, correct?
I'll answer legally correct.
Yes.
They don't need any relief from the board for any of the interior stuff. All the
So
relief-
this is, well, there's a change to the dumpster in the back and such, but all of this is as information. There's nothing that we're going to act on here.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. The next exhibit is labeled A4, also dated August 13th, 2020. And this sheet is labeled elevations, and it is the architectural drawing A2 as was submitted with the application. This drawing shows two facades, the two primary facades of the corner of the facility where Ross will be occupying. The main facade, the westerly elevation, is what faces the parking lot and fronts ultimately onto Route 22. The northern facade is on the side of the building or the end of the building, which fronts on New Brunswick. We'll start with the front facade because that's where most of the work is being proposed. Currently, the Staples facade is just over 32 feet high above its entry walkway. As you can see, the proposed elevations are creating a tiered effect on the facade, both vertically and as we showed in plan, with the highest proposed point of the parapet at 42 feet. Now, it's not the entire width of the entry or the facade of the unit, but it is a good portion of it. It then tiers itself down to 37 feet. It tiers itself down again to 28 feet, and then ultimately finding its way to the existing low parapet of the shopping center, which is at 24 feet. So it's very a wedding cake style design. The intent behind this design is really to bring prominence to this end of the building. Again, the Staples facade was very flat, somewhat dated, didn't really anchor this end of the building. This is the prominent corner that you see as you come down Brunswick Avenue or Brunswick there. So it is really to bring some prominence, bring some depth and character to that end of the facade. Very similar to what you would see with Target in the shopping center, as well as Michael's. They both have a tiered type of facade. both vertically as well as having some depth in the facade as well at their entrances. So very aligned with what they are proposed. This isn't a color rendition, but as far as colors, the proposed are in kind with what's on the building, beige and browns. Their color accent is blue, very similar to the Ashley furniture that's at the end of the shopping center. Blue lettering for the signage with some blue accent bands painted in on some of these accent columns, etc. As we turn the corner facing New Brunswick, there is a little bit of a facade work occurring here to create a signage panel. Again, this end of the building does front on another street. So similar to Ashley, where they sit on the corner, they have that second sign that faces Route 78. Here, the intent is to take advantage of that street frontage and provide a signage panel there to help anchor that corner of the building and provide some identification for Ross for Less. This facade here is a small adjustment of up to 28 feet from the 24 that's there now, again, in an effort to create some prominence in the corner and provide an area for signage. The rest of the building really remains intact as it currently exists with the brick and then the block that's currently there. So those really highlight the major structural changes to the facade. I'll touch on the signage because I know that's a big component while we're on the elevations, to touch on how we counted the signs, and there's a number of different ways, but we took the worst case approach in terms of how we numbered the signs. As we look at the front facade, obviously there's the Ross sign, and we counted that as one sign. The Dress for Less, which is their tagline, similar to how Michael's has a tagline, Ashley has a tagline. We counted that as a second sign, and we encompassed all three of those words, Dress for Less, as in our square footage calculation. On this front facade, it's a little bit difficult to see, but I'll zoom in. They also have these little wall plaques. These are more intended for the pedestrian scale. These are roughly 7 foot 8 inches above the walking surface. They're non-illuminated, but it's just a way of, if someone's walking by, there's something there that kind of tells them who this retailer is. There's one on both ends of the leased space. One on the right-hand side of the entrance, one at the left-hand side. There's another sign that is a little deceiving that's being proposed and difficult to see on the front facade because it's actually perpendicular to the entrance doors. It's easier to see it on the side facade. Here, looking at the side from New Brunswick, you see that there's a hanging Ross sign. This is a hanging sign above the entry doors. And the intent of this sign is to be able to identify the retailer for those that might be walking up and down the sidewalk. If I were leaving the now vacated Best Buy or leaving the Target and happen to be walking up the sidewalk, there's an identification up ahead that tells me that there's a Ross retailer up there. That's the intent of that sign. So we added that sign in our calculation. And this particular sign is a two-sided sign. So there would be a sign panel facing the rest of the shopping center towards the other retailers, as well as a sign panel facing Brunswick or New Brunswick. In addition, this new sign that's proposed on the side of the building, again, we accounted the term Ross as one sign and Dress for Less as another sign. In total, it's 7 signs, counting the plaques, the hanging sign, and these larger wall signs. That's how we accounted for them. Now, we could very easily interpret it where Ross Dress for Less as a whole is one sign. Very similar to how, Target with their bullseye and so on often are read together. That's another way on how we can interpret this, and I'll leave that to the board. And the reason I say that is in looking at some of the reports in the planner's report, there was, there was an interpretation that was done that looked at Ross Dress for Less as a single sign rather than two signs. And, we're certainly not opposed to that. We just wanted to present how we define the signage. I'll just zoom out a little bit. I'm going to touch on a couple of comments on Mr. Finelli's report. Item number 4 that mentions the signs. I highlighted the signs. However, Mr. Finelli mentioned 6 wall signs, and he's correct with the 6 wall signs. What's missing there in that statement is the 1 hanging sign that's proposed over the entry doors. So I just wanted to kind of just clarify that. Okay. I believe that is the only item on Mr. Finelli's report that need to be addressed. In reviewing Elizabeth and KMA's report, we would need to just review the signage in terms of how we want to identify the number of signs. And also we need to refine the square footage. I think there's a little bit of discrepancy between what is now being proposed as far as signage and square footage versus what may have been proposed in a previous application on this site. So I think if Elizabeth is okay, I can work with her directly to refine the square footages based on whatever findings the board has this evening to kind of correct those values.
I'm happy to work with you as the board might direct. I'm sorry for the board. I think I pulled as Mr. Menino said, it seems I pulled a previously submitted submission from the applicant rather than the current plan. So my sign data is out of date. So I'm sorry for any confusion that's caused.
How far off is it? Is it completely different? Because the originally the retailer came themselves, correct?
Correct.
And so is that, Beth, is that the one you were looking at?
I'm sorry, Ray, I missed the first part of your question.
You wanted to know.
The original application was the retailer themselves, and then they abandoned it and turned it over to the property owner. So is that what you were looking at? I guess what I'm asking is there really that a huge discrepancy between the sizing?
Well, Ray, can I make a suggestion? Can we just ask Mr. Menino right now to go through Beth's memo and just give us the corrected square footage? Because I'm going to need it for the resolution.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. We need to know what we're talking about.
Right. You can't do it after. You got to do it now.
Can I direct you to the table in my report, right? Unless you prefer another format, but I think if we could correct the numbers in there, it would probably give the board a good picture as to what's proposed and be able to compare it to what had previously been discussed.
That works for me. I like the way you had it laid out, actually. So if we could just get the right numbers in there. John, do you have those numbers?
I do.
Okay.
I do. So, and if I may, so this is these signage. This signage package is a correction from their very original package. There was some refinement when they brought this to us, and this is what we have as the current signage package.
Right. So, Mr. Menino, you go to paragraph 1.3 in her memo. Start there.
Yes.
Correct all those figures. Then you can go to the sign compliance chart.
No problem. Okay, so if we look at item 1.3 in Elizabeth's memo for front facade, and I'll zoom in on it here just so you can kind of get a little bit.
John, can we share the chart maybe, since we're going to be changing those numbers? Is that helpful to everybody?
You mean Elizabeth's chart?
Yeah. I think I could find it, but I wasn't prepared to do that. So
Also,
I
just
know
Mr. Menino, so you know, she goes by Beth.
Okay, thank you. I don't have her report available to bring up as a share here on my screen.
Let me see if I can.
If we email to somebody, who should we email to?
Email it to Menino since he's file sharing right now.
Beth, you gonna do that? Because I got it as well.
One moment, I have it in my email. Let me pull it off my email and bring it over.
Yeah, I had.
Let me just stop share here for 1 second so I can get through. All right, I got it. So let me share my screen. Okay, is everyone able to see?
Yep, we
That's
got, yep,
what-
we see it.
Okay. All right. So item 1.3, front facade facing Route 22. Now, this is what I was alluding to in my testimony. Beth lumped together the Ross Dress for Less as one sign, which certainly we're not opposed to.
Yeah, actually, for precedent-setting purposes, it's better to do it for the board the way Beth did it. It
good.
cuts down the number of signs that you're proposing.
Perfect. So the Ross Dress for Less on the front facade facing 202 or facing 22, the actual square footage proposed is 291 square feet.
Okay, and is it internally illuminated?
Yes, it is internally illuminated.
Okay.
So this is where it says facade sign 528 is now what?
291.
291.
That's both the Ross and Dress for Less total.
That's correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. The next two, the Ross logo plaque, those are the two non-illuminated signs that are wall mounted to either side of the entry. Those are actually 6.25 square feet as an oval. Now that is the oval square footage. If you were to take a rectangular shape around the oval, it would be 8 square feet. So
Okay, Beth, what's the ordinance say to do?
Draw a box around the sign.
Okay, so for purposes, our purposes tonight, they're 8 square feet.
okay,
And that's 2 at 8 square feet, not
That's
combined.
that's correct. The Ross under canopy sign, that's the hanging sign that we discussed. That one is internally illuminated. It's two-sided, and again, as an oval, it's 6.25 square feet per side.
Right, but you gotta
As
draw a box
rectangle,
around it.
8 square feet per side, though it is a hanging sign,
Okay, but the 8 square feet, that's each side?
each side.
So Beth, how does that work under the ordinance? Is that-
The ordinance only requires sign calculation for one side. The one thing that I'm just checking right now is to confirm that that's not specific only to freestanding signs.
Right.
So let me just confirm that. But my gut instinct is that it requires it on just one side, but let me speak up if that's incorrect.
Okay.
All right.
And then the side facade facing New Brunswick Avenue, Ross Dress for Less, again, combined as one sign is 126 square feet. And it is internally illuminated.
So we either have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 signs, or if that hanging sign counts as 2, we'll have 6 signs. Is that correct?
2, 3, 4. Correct.
Why don't you keep on going? Beth is going to look that up.
Okay. Now,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Does it matter how we treat this as long as we all agree on the same number? In other words, does Beth have to ferret this out, or can we just treat it as 2? Because I don't think the number of signs is really going to be an issue here so much as the size anyway.
Well, if it's 2 signs, it's going to be a total of 16 square feet. If it's 1 sign with 2 sides, it's going to be 8 square feet. So I would
We'll
just
count
like
it
to-
as 16 square feet and just say it's 1 sign. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, yeah, we could do that, and that would save Beth from having to look it up.
I mean, I think everybody saw the picture of it. We know what we're talking about, so.
Okay, and we're going to count it, because it's 2 sides, Ray, we're going to count it as 1 sign, 5 signs. This is 1 sign, but because it has 2 sides, we're going to count it as 16 square feet instead of 8 square feet. Is that
That
correct?
makes sense to me, unless anybody else has any thoughts on it. I'm
Okay, so
sorry,
Mr.
John, you can continue.
okay. Moving further through Beth's report and letter, there's a reference to freestanding signs. Currently, there is no freestanding signs as part of our application. There's obviously an existing pylon sign for the development. Our understanding is that what Staples previously occupied within that pylon sign would be replaced with a panel that. Right.
Yeah.
There's multiple retailers listed on those.
But you are proposing to replace the panel specified in the report, though, right? You're just indicating that these are existing.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part. I'm sorry.
She said you're proposing replacement panels, but you're replacing Staples. So it's the same number that's there now is going to be there after you do the replacement, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Zoning compliance, I believe Michael Textoris had touched on some of the, obviously the zoning districts and the variances that we are asking for. The sign compliance here really, again, touches on the freestanding signs. Again, it all is existing sign structures as we just discussed. I don't believe there's anything further that we need to discuss on those. The sign compliance, this is what needs to be revised based on what we just discussed with the square footage of the signs and the number of signs. 5 signs with a new total square footage based on what we just discussed.
Okay,
Now,
do you have the new total square footage so I don't have to add it up later?
I can add it up now with the revised 8 square foot for the pylons. I can give you.
If you could just correct this sign compliance chart right now, it'd make life easier, at least for me.
So the total signage would be 449 square feet in lieu of the 442 that we're proposing right now, and that's because of how we've
Okay,
changed.
so whoa. Where on this chart do I don't see 442. I see 688 total.
The 442 is an hour chart on
Listen, I understand. What I'd like you to do is go to her chart and correct the figures on her chart, please.
So Beth's figure is 544 square feet facing Route 22 and 144 square feet facing New Brunswick Avenue.
Right.
The new numbers is 126 square feet facing New Brunswick Avenue.
Yeah.
And facing Route 22 will be 321 square feet.
For a total then of 447.
That's correct.
So 544 goes to 321 and 144 goes to 126.
That is
That's
correct.
correct.
Continuing on to item 3 and 3.1, this is further conversations and notations regarding the signage. I believe that we have discussed sufficiently at this point.
Basically, your testimony is that the proposed building heights and the proposed signage compare favorably to the other portions of the building and the other signage. That's your testimony, correct?
That is correct.
John, just for, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but I was looking at this the other day. So Best Buy had not as elaborate as what Ross is proposing, but they had a facade that was up above the height of the building, if I'm not mistaken. For reference, do you have an idea of how high this would be relative to that facade that's on the now abandoned Best Buy building? Because that's a building right next to this, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. So Michael Textoris did a study as best as was possible to take measurements of some of those existing facades. The top of the Best Buy is approximately 37 feet at the top of that peak, that blue peak, essentially.
Yep.
They have. The top of the Ashley Furniture gable because they have a gable element, is just over 40 feet. Those are the two, I would say, highest points of the development. Target is about 36.5 feet at their highest point above their entry wall. Michael's is approximately 34 feet above their entry wall.
And I'm sorry, and yours was 42?
42, and Staples currently is just over 32 feet.
Yep. Thank you.
I believe the rest of the remaining report from Beth is, deals with some policies and considerations for the board. I don't believe there's other comments specifically directed to be addressed at this time.
Very good. So I'll ask, first I'll ask the board if there's any questions for John. If you raise your hand, we'll make sure to call on you so we don't have a lot of over talking.
I got one, Ray.
Go ahead, Paul.
Just the signs that are illuminated interiorly, are they going to have a time on them, or is that going to be all while it's in the dark? Are they going off at midnight, or are they going to be on all night long?
My understanding is that they will operate similar to the rest of the shopping center. Should the shopping center have a restriction for illumination, timing, that they would follow suit, and that would be something that Madison Properties would need to coordinate with Ross, their tenant.
Okay.
Do we know what that is? I don't know what that is today. If there's,
I do not myself. Maybe I'm not sure if Penny has an understanding, or if someone, a management from Madison Properties may have to.
Maybe that's something you could ask the property owner's representative.
I can check back with leasing what the conclusion is over there, but I can tell you based on the other shopping centers, so we do have Ross and other similar stores. It usually runs with a timer from their corporate office, and it's always on a timer. It's either till closing. Every store is different. That's why I can't tell you conclusively regarding this store, but it's typically either till store closing or till midnight, usually, while there's still traffic outside just for advertisement. But that's the typical way how these signs work.
So Ray, that's one thing you'll have to poll the board about later. Should there be some condition saying that the sign lighting has to be off on a timer, but in no event off by midnight or whatever? You guys will discuss that later, and you'll tell me what if anything, you want to do.
yeah, I was kind of what I was getting to is, do we have an ordinance or anything that applies there? Because I mean, we could do whatever we want, but if we have an ordinance, we ought to be consistent with the ordinance.
Maybe Beth can look that up as the next witness testifies.
Does anybody else have any questions for John?
I do. And this is really just for clarification on the elevations. So as I understand it, part of this on the elevations, the front facade is going to be bumped out essentially onto what sidewalk now, is that correct?
That's correct.
And how far out is that coming?
Approximately 15 feet from the existing facade.
And just, I guess, for our professionals, so that part doesn't require any relief?
No, Bruce, it's actually part of the building. So it's just the building, and it's only a canopy. There's no space under it, obviously. But it's part of the minor site plan application.
Right.
But not specific relief.
Put it this way, it needs site plan approval, but it doesn't need any variances.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not
And then just for, I understand what you said, but I believe on your elevation, so there's some dotted lines, and I presume that's represents the existing Staples building. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's a profile that you see on what the existing Staples building was, so you can visually compare.
Okay. And I'm just curious, Beth, if we were to, maybe this is probably Beth, but maybe Mike. The Staples sign, he had the big lettering and the whole thing was red. Do we have any idea what the square footage of that was?
No, that was, I think one of the things I had raised in my memo was suggesting that the applicant talk a little bit about a comparison as to, yeah, how does it compare to the former Staples sign?
I do not have that information, though I can get a square footage of what that red area is, because we did verify that. As far as the individual letters of the Staples sign and what size they were, I don't have that information, but I can certainly get you the information on the size of the red area.
Yeah, I mean, it may not be correct, but I really consider the whole red thing as the sign.
Yeah, John, just for clarification, because we were talking about this, and I think what you're calculating in square footage certainly isn't the facade that the sign is mounted on. It's the actual combined lettering that's boxed off as best described if you draw
That's
a rectangle
correct.
around.
These are individual channel letters that are internally illuminated. So we took a rectangular box around the entire word and or wording as per the ordinance.
Yeah, so the facade itself is pretty extensive, but the actual signage relative to the facade is not.
Correct.
But there's one difference, if I'm correct here. If on yours you have the letters, but the building behind the letters is basically the same color as the rest of the building. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's a very beige cream color, very in kind with what's out there now.
As compared to the Staples one, which was a great big red square with the letters on there.
Correct. The red certainly jumped out at you far more than you would identify with these.
Okay, and almost academic, but I'll just ask the question. Did you guys consider or look at the possibility of, instead of putting your sign on New Brunswick, putting one on the Ashley side of the building, so it would be visible from Route 78?
You mean from the 78 exit ramp, Bruce?
Yeah.
No, that was never
no,
something that was discussed or considered as far as I'm aware.
I would have thought that would have been far more beneficial to you than being on New Brunswick.
I think, John, for clarification, I think what Bruce is talking about, Bruce, please correct me, is to mount the Ross sign on the side of the building next to where the Ashley sign is mounted on the Ashley building. So it's be able to be seen from Route 78, not the freestanding sign. And Mike, Bruce, is that what you're saying?
That's right.
Okay. That's a significant difference in a lot of areas.
Yeah,
Right.
no, again, I understand. I believe I understood that, but it wasn't something I was ever discussed with our team. That it was something that the tenant and or the property management company had considered putting a Ross sign on that end of the building next to Ashley.
It may have come up when Ross actually came in the first time for this application. I do remember some discussion around that, but I mean,
Bruce,
if that's not your application, then we need to deal with what we have.
Right, and for all we know, Ashley wouldn't be very happy about that.
Well, I think then what you'll have is you'll want Target will want their sign on there, and Mike
That's right.
sign on there, and everyone will want their sign on there. So.
Right.
All right. That's it for me.
Any other questions for John? Okay, then if anybody from the public has questions for John, please hit the raise your hand button and we'll unmute you. Going once, going twice. Okay, it doesn't appear that we have any questions from the public. So Michael, you can proceed.
Okay, thank you. So our final witness, we just have some brief testimony from Art Bernard, our professional planner. And I would ask that Art turn on his video and give the board your educational experience, some experience that you've had with your profession and your licensing.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Art Bernard, and I'm the managing member of my own firm. I have a master's in city and regional planning from Rutgers University. I'm a licensed professional planner with over 45 years of experience in land use planning. And as a consultant planner, I've represented 27 municipalities in various capacities. And in those capacities, I represented the planning boards and boards of adjustment on their development applications. I've represented private sector clients before local boards all over the state, and represented my municipal and private sector clients as an expert witness in Superior Court, and have served the Superior Court as a special master in 7 municipalities. I don't believe I've ever been before your board, though.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that Art Bernard be qualified as an expert in professional planning.
Yes, I recognize Art as an expert. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Art, go ahead.
Well, just to review that we need a variance for height. The permitted height is 35 feet and we're proposing 42 feet. And since the 42 feet is 10% higher than the 35 feet, or more than 10% higher, we need a D variance for that. And then we need a variance for the number of signs, where 1 is permitted, and I guess we counted up 6.
All right, we're saying 5. We're counting that 1 sign with the 2 sides, 1 sign, so 5 signs.
5 signs. And we talked about the area. I believe the permitted area is 172 square feet, and we're proposing 447 square feet, I think is what we added up. Okay.
Correct.
And the applicant needs this relief because it's trying to attract a national retailer that is actually thriving in an area where shopping centers are struggling. The height of the facade and the proportional signs are part of the Ross Dress for Less facade package. And they're designed to give the store, as Mr. Mino said, the prominence of an anchor that will benefit not only this store, but the other businesses in the shopping center. Let's talk about the positive criteria for the height first. Now, this is a D variance, but it's not a D1. It's not a situation where the governing body has already determined. It is a situation that the governing body has already determined that the site is particularly suited for this use, and by making it a permitted use. So to receive the D variance, I need to convince the board that the site continues to be suited for this use, even though the proposed height is 7 feet higher than the zone standard. And in my opinion, the use is still suitable because the use is still a permitted commercial use within the shopping
Art,
center.
hold up. I don't think it's whether, I think the test is whether the site will accommodate the problems associated with the proposed permitted use, but with a taller building than permitted. It's close to what you said, but that's what.
I view them as the same thing, but I appreciate what you're saying, Jonathan. And I think it can accommodate the problems for many of the same reasons. That it is a permitted use within the shopping center, that the use and the shopping center are at a controlled intersection along a busy state highway, that the use is still suitable because the increase in height does not increase the floor area, so it doesn't increase the traffic, that the increase in height won't create a visual problem for the neighbors because it's so well buffered from not only Route 22, but also the residences that are in the back of Dumont Road and Cornfield. So those are in effect the positive proofs for the height variance. With regards to the C variance, the C variance is for the signs. We have some extra signs. I would note that in terms of the larger facade signs that we added up to be the bulk of the 447 square feet of signage. There's 2 of them, 1 on each facade, and I think on a corner store, it's common for the two facades to have signage. For example, the Ashley Home store on the other side of the same building has signage on two facades. I think, in my opinion, that each of these variances for the signs can be justified based on the C2 criteria, where boards can approve relief when a proposal advances the purposes of municipal land use law and the benefits of the proposal substantially outweigh the detriments. And when weighing the benefits and the detriments, the courts have instructed boards to consider the benefits of the entire proposal, not just the benefits of a specific variance. So in this case, I think the benefits of the proposal include that the proposal advances various purposes of the municipal land use law, including purpose A, which is encouraging the appropriate use of land, and purpose G, which is to provide sufficient space for commercial uses in appropriate locations to meet the needs of New Jersey citizens. Now, with regards to those purposes of the municipal land use law, if you read them from front to back, you come away with two main thoughts. One involves the appropriate use of land, and the other involves some benefit to New Jersey citizens. With regard to the appropriate use of land, as I've indicated, the governing body has already determined that this site is an appropriate site for this use by making it a permitted use. And I hope you agree with me that the use is still an appropriate use of land despite the increase in height. With regards to the public benefits, the public is going to get the benefit of shopping at a successful national store, and the shopping center is going to benefit from a retailer that is actually thriving in a world where online shopping has become more common. I also find that the proposal advances purpose H of the municipal land use law, which is to promote the free flow of traffic. The extra signage on both facades makes it easier for drivers to spot the store and make turning movements, both from New Brunswick Avenue and from within the site. And that side facade on New Brunswick Avenue will be staring right at customers that are leaving the, what I'll call the other shopping center on the other side of New Brunswick Avenue. And the lower three signs are going to make it easier for pedestrians to find the store. I also find that the increased height and the proportional signage is going to help break up the building. It's going to add diversity to the facade. It's going to give the store a sense of prominence to promote a desirable visual environment, and so that it advances purpose I of the municipal land use law. So those are my positive proofs for the height and the sign variances, but I also have to address the negative criteria. And so first we'll start with the negative impact to the public good. And in reading Ms. McManus's report this afternoon, she hit it right on the head. It's not that there has to be a substantial detriment to the public good. And here I don't see a detriment really at all to the public good. The increased height is not associated with more floor area, so it's not going to signal a more intense use. The shopping center is well buffered from Route 22 and residential development behind Dumont Road. So the increased height and sign relief will not have a negative impact on the neighbors. Bear with me just for a second. I think the proposal is actually going to promote the public good because it brings a thriving retailer in an era where shopping centers are struggling to survive. In terms of the impact on the zone plan, again, I don't find substantial detriment at all because the use is a permitted use. The purpose of the B2 zone is designed to promote highway business uses and shopping centers. You have a goal in your master plan of promoting non-residential growth to address the imbalance between jobs and housing in the township. So I think, again, that helps promote your zone plan. And frankly, I view this proposal as more fine tuning rather than a substantial break from your zone plan. So if I would summarize my conclusions for the board, I think the site is particularly suited for the use. and can accommodate any problems associated with the increase in height. The public benefits from the proposal because the public will have the benefit of shopping at the store, and because Ross Dress for Less could be an anchor that will benefit other stores in the shopping center. I find that the proposal advances purposes of the municipal land use law, and I conclude that there are no substantial detriments to the public good or the zone plan. And so I find that the benefits substantially outweigh the detriments, and I would urge the board to grant the relief.
Excuse me, Kathy Cullen's having a hard time connecting. She sent me a text. She can hear, but she can't speak.
I have muted her because she kept popping up with background noise, Frank.
Oh, so you've been muting her.
Yeah, I've been trying to mute people that keep popping up so we can focus on the speaker. And with their background noise, and we can unmute anybody that wants to be unmuted, but that's why.
Let's try unmuting her and see if she can speak. If
Sure,
not,
she's off now.
I can ask her question. Kathy, can you talk?
Hello, can you hear me?
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I just had one question. Was any consideration given to doing one less tier on the facade? So starting the first tier where the existing parapet is on the right?
I think that's probably a question for the architect.
Correct.
The architect is still on, so where, Mr. Menino?
John,
Yes.
yeah.
Not necessarily. What we had discussed with Ross really is their prototypical national brand image, and that's what's been proposed. They, as part of their brand, is the defining facade needs to start just above the, I'll say, the main body of the building. Again, very similar to how Target and Michaels break that line to help define their entry point. You know, Ross does the same thing. So again, what's presented is what is their national brand standard as far as how they articulate that wedding cake shape.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Ray, before the board asks Mr. Bernard any more questions, I just want to correct something. I want to make sure the board is applying the right standard. He just mentioned about the site being particularly suited. The board does not have to find that this site has to be particularly suited.
Just think he's freezing.
If the use was not permitted and they needed a D6 height variance, then, in my opinion, you'd also have to find the site particularly suitable. But the use is permitted. So again, the standard is very simple. This is right out of Grasso versus Spring Lakes, which is an Appellate Division 2004 case. The board's focus has to be on whether the site will accommodate the problems associated with the principal permitted structure, but at a height higher than permitted by the ordinance. So in my opinion, my legal opinion, the board should focus on Beth's memo on page 4, where she goes through, what's the purpose of the sign ordinance? In one word, it's aesthetics. So if the board finds that what they're proposing is going to look nice and compares favorably with, the D6 compares favorably with the other heights, and if the signs they propose, even though there's 5 of them instead of 1 of them, that it meets the intent and purposes of the ordinance, in my opinion, there's your D6 proofs and there's your C2 proofs. That's my 2 cents. You don't have to go to where Mr. Bernard went, no need.
John, what variances can Paul and I vote on?
Well, because there's a D6, quite frankly, you and Paul the reason you're here is to, you're our administrator. I shouldn't have even let Paul ask any questions. Because there's a D6 variance, a D variance, the class 1 and class 3, they can't even participate. That's my bad.
Then can somebody else ask the question about illumination? Because that was a good question.
So is Paul allowed to stay in, what do you want? What's Paul's status?
Paul can stay in and watch, but Paul, you should mute yourself. It's my bad. I should have said it in the beginning. I forgot. I had it in my notes. I forgot to say something about it. And just so the board knows, because you're a combined land use board under section 25C of the MLUL, any D variance, a class 1 and class 3 can't even participate. In other words, it's not like you're an alternate and let's say you get the regular members there, so you don't need the alternates to vote, but the alternates can participate. They can ask questions, they can deliberate, but they can't vote. But I shouldn't have even let Paul speak. Again, my apologies, I screwed up, but I don't
Okay,
think
John,
that
we're
anything
good.
bad's gonna happen.
We got it. Paul's now in the doghouse.
No, John's in the doghouse.
Remember it forever.
I'm in the doghouse because I didn't say
Oh,
anything.
you're
to
still
Paul.
barking. I can't hear Paul, so
Paul's trying to say something.
I think we
No,
need to unmute him so he can get his last licks in. Hang on. Paul,
No.
you were going to...
No, okay, I understand all that and everything. Does that also apply to the Home Depot one that's coming up next? Can I leave and go home?
No, because that one doesn't have a D variance. Nice try there, bucko.
All right, mute me.
All right, you're gone.
There was a question about illumination, and since it first came up, I did look into the township ordinance to find out a little bit more about illumination of signs and whether or not they're required to lower or turn off the illumination. So are folks still interested in that information?
Oh, yeah,
I am.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So there are illumination requirements, timing imposed for illuminated signs, but it is only those which face property with a residential use. And so I don't think those are applicable. For illuminated signs that do not face a residential use, it then points to the township's lighting standards and just states simply that the signs have to comply with the township's lighting standards. So as I look at the lighting standards, extinguishment of lighting, John, it's section 16-12B, if you're interested.
Yep, thank you.
Yep. Automatic shut-off devices shall be required for all parking areas providing 20 or more spaces, and requires that lighting in such parking areas shall be extinguished within 1 hour of the close of business or termination of the last working shift at the site, with the sole exceptions being lighting required for illumination. Or excuse me, safety and security. Sorry about
So
that.
these signs face the parking areas, so it's your opinion, and I agree, that
Yeah.
the ordinance says it's got to be auto shut-off devices within 1 hour of the close of business.
Yes. Yeah, unless it's a safety or security issue.
Okay.
Does the applicant want to comment on that? They're prepared to comply?
Well, yeah, that's what Penny said before, that their corporate standard is to have them off within an hour of the store closing, but no later than midnight. Well, this condition's going to be, the ordinance says that it's auto shut off within 1 hour of the close of business.
Okay. He was there. Figured let him agree. Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
He has said he agrees. I don't see him, but I just heard him.
I saw him and heard him.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, there he is. I see you.
Ray, I'm
Very
going to
good.
step away. I'm going to step away. Just take control. I'll be back.
All right, Frank, I got it. Thank you. Thanks for the heads up. So before we lose track of, get ahead of ourselves here, does anybody else have any questions for Art? Anybody on the board or professionals? I don't see any hands, so I'm going to assume not. Does anybody from the public have any questions for the last person that testified, Art Bernard? Please use your raise your hand function so we can unmute you and let you speak. I don't see any, so I don't think we have any more questions. Michael, do you want to summarize, or?
Do you want to make a closing, or you want to waive your closing and let me just tell the board what relief is required? Okay, so they're applying for minor site plan approval, a D6 height variance for the facade, and C variance for the number of signs and the total square footage, the total area of the signs. And basically, you heard the testimony. I'm not going to repeat it. And if the board thinks that they've proved the elements, which minor site plan, did they comply with all the zoning ordinance regulations and the site plan requirements after you look at if there are any variances or site plan ordinance exceptions? So here you just look at the variances. If you believe that they proved that they should have the D6 variance for the facade height and the C variances for the number of signs and the square footage, then you would vote to approve those, and then at that point, the testimony is they comply with all other requirements, so you would then vote to grant the minor site plan approval. So if
Thank
anyone
you,
has any
John.
questions on any of that, ask me, but it's that simple.
As context, I don't remember the zoning board ever being involved in sign applications for, and it may be just my memory, but Staples or Best Buy or Ashley or any of those other retailers there. But I don't think any of those signs
Well,
would actually.
Ashley, the board
Ashley?
granted the variance for Ashley to be on the side near Route 78, but the others
Okay.
were before my time. Mike Finelli might know.
Yeah. The others, Ray, were all part of the preliminary site plan application that went through the planning board when the mall came in the first time.
Okay.
So that's how that worked.
Gotcha. Well, the reason I brought that up is just for the other board members. So the zoning board, at least in my tenure, we never approved the signs on those other retailers, but I would be willing to bet a significant sum that none of those signs on those other retail establishments actually would be within our current zoning. Would
Yeah, but
you
just so
agree,
you know,
Mike?
Ray, the sign ordinance was substantially amended sometime around 2006. So when this thing was approved, they may have been permitted. They might very well be lawfully created pre-existing signs.
Yep.
And Ray, it may have been one of the meetings that I covered, but we did do an approval for the side sign on Ashley.
That's what we said.
Yeah, Mike had already mentioned that. I don't remember that. It may just be that I don't remember it, but I mean, this is definitely, looking at the plans, the largest facade of any of those buildings, but it's not, in my mind, it's not completely inconsistent with what the other retailers there have done. It just happens to be a little more grandiose in scale from what I can tell, but we don't have anything with the other stores relative to really see that. John asked if anybody on the board had questions for him, or I would say Beth, regarding her report, what the positive and negative criteria are. If we don't have any questions, then I guess we can proceed to ask for a motion. Oh, public questions, I'm sorry.
If I may, sorry, this is John from Sermon Architect. I double checked the numbers on the signage, a minor correction, because we kind of added things up quickly there. The total square footage is actually 449 square feet, not 447.
Okay, hold on. Okay, so what's the breakdown?
Okay, the breakdown, the facade facing New Brunswick is still 126 square feet. However, the facade facing Route 22 and the parking is 323 for a total of 449.
Okay, and if I take that to the prior page, 1.3, I'll tell you what. If they grant to approve this thing, just send me an email with the corrections to 1.3, correct it again, okay?
Yep.
Okay, so one last time, I'll ask if anyone from the public has any questions or comment on this application. Please raise your hand. And seeing none, it looks like we've exhausted all of our questions, so I'll ask for a motion to approve a resolution to grant the D and C variances for the Ross signage. And I'm not going to try to summarize all of that, but I think it's going from 1 sign to 5 and then increase in square footage to a total
Correct.
of
449
square feet.
And the D6 for the height, instead of the maximum 35 going to 42 feet, and the minor site plan approval.
Correct.
Well, John, are you going to wrap up? Question, because I was going to add some comments relative to some additional conditions to the minor site plan approval.
This is beyond what's in your report? This is beyond what's in your report?
Separate motions, I thought that's what you were going to do. The variances and then the minor site plan.
Okay. But the only issue I was going to ask him was about lighting. It's now satisfied. So, okay, so the D6 variance requires a minimum of 5 votes. I'm not getting the sense that there's like a split board here. So why don't, you know what, Ray? Maybe just to make sure that this doesn't get screwed up, maybe you want to take like a deliberation / straw poll, because if everyone is in agreement with all the relief, we could do one motion with all that relief and not have to break it up into 3.
Understood. So
Why don't you do a quick deliberation? Let's hear from everyone so we know where they are in the issues.
how about if you would intend to support all the relief, just hit the raise your hand button. I don't have one because I'm a moderator, but then we
Put
can
your hand up. If you're in favor
or
of all
raise
the
your
relief,
hand
put your
or
hand up.
And I
trying to
agree,
see.
I'm on phone. This is Joe, I'm on the phone, so I agree.
Okay.
All right, so it
And
looks
I,
like,
well,
Kathy?
yes, I agree as well.
Okay, Bill Kenyak?
Yes.
Dawn Marie?
Yes, yes.
Okay, Ray, so I think just go with your motion.
Okay, so we
can.
we can do a single motion. Thanks, John.
All right, if we're gonna do a single motion, let me just throw this out there then. There's nothing in my report relative to, because with minor site plan, there's only one phase of approval. So, should they secure approval, they can start construction. There's no comments in my report about construction. We should just make sure there's comments, and I can work with John on the resolution relative to pre-construction meetings, bonding if necessary.
Mike, those are the board's standard conditions. So again, my bad. The board has standard conditions in its rules, and all those standard conditions, it's implied anytime this board makes a motion to approve a site plan that those standard conditions are going in. And Mike Ogrodnik just put his thumbs up because he's been in front of other boards I represent. He probably knows the standard conditions already without even having to read them. Mike, can you indicate by shaking your head and putting your thumb up, Mike Ogrodnik?
Yeah, we'll comply with all the standard conditions.
It's not much, but it wasn't mentioned at all, and I just wanted to get it out there before for the applicant's information and for the board. So, okay.
John, or I'm sorry, Mike, you had mentioned bonding, and I know that has to do with probably construction bonding or something. Something that occurred to me that I just, when you brought that up, if Ross decided to abandon this building, would there be any requirement that they remove the facade or restore the building back to the way it was originally constructed, or is it just kind of left the way it is? And is that something that's a concern?
Not per the bond that I was referring to. In this case, if let's say they didn't finish, something, like they didn't put the sign on the side wall of the building, but they wanted to open. They would have to actually bond to put that last sign up because it's a requirement of the approval.
Well, except if they could abandon the approval for that sign. Okay? Ray's talking about something different.
I know he is. That's why it doesn't apply.
Right. He's explaining what the bonding is.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think that's a concern that would be the landlord's concern more than anybody is that, you know, but okay. I'm not going to open that can of worms.
Yeah,
so
bonding would most likely not apply in this application, in the case of this.
Yeah, I agree with that, Mike.
Yeah.
okay. So we're going to make one motion. Jeremy got booted out for some reason. Wasn't me, but I just let him back in. So hopefully he'll be available to vote. We're going to make one motion. I need somebody to make the motion and then a second.
Dawn Marie makes the motion.
Dawn Marie, thank you.
I'll second.
Joe, perfect. And then we need a roll call vote. This is a motion in favor of granting relief for the site plan D variance and so on.
C variance subject to all those conditions we just discussed.
Correct.
Joseph Chitello,
Yes.
Ray Buckwalter,
Yes.
Bruce Williams,
Yes.
Kathy Cullen,
Yes.
Don Marie Condas,
Yes.
Mark Scuderi,
Yes.
Joseph Fiamma,
Yes.
Bill Konyak,
Unmuting.
Gotta unmute him.
Yep, I did.
He's still muted. Bill, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I can't unmute him.
I know. Bill Konyak. There we go.
Now he's good.
Goes.
Yes.
and Pam Peslis.
Yes.
Okay, the motion
Okay.
carries. Very
Michael
good.
Rodnick is sign languaging. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Michael. You guys can stick around if you're enthralled by our process, or you can enjoy your evening.
I got to put a 5-year-old to bed, but thank you very much, board.
Very good, fellas. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, I think the next thing on the agenda that if I can find it is the Home Depot application. Do we have that applicant present?
Yes, and the attorney for that applicant is Mike Stanzione. Can you enter your appearance?
Yes, Michael Stanzione, Herring, Duveneck, Stanzione, and Dunn in Toms River, New Jersey, on behalf of the applicant, Distributed Solar Development.
Okay, who are your witnesses tonight?
We have two. I have two witnesses. One may not have is the representative of the applicant, so I'm not sure he may not have to speak. But our first one is Connor Trujillo. I believe I said that correctly. He's
Okay, Connor, can you unmute yourself and can you spell Connor with one N, C-O-N-O-R?
That's correct, yes.
And how do you spell your last name? And please spell it slowly.
Sure, it's T-R-U-J-I-L-L-O.
Give me that. J-I-L?
L-O.
Okay, and would you mind if people just call you Connor?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, and do you have any professional licenses or anything?
I'm not a certified PE, but I did get a degree in engineering.
Okay, Mr. Stanzione, what is his relationship to the applicant? He's the applicant's what?
He's a representative from Pure Power Engineering who did the site plans.
So he's a licensed engineer or just an engineer that works for Pure Power?
Yeah, so I'm an engineer that works for Pure Power
But
Engineering.
he's not a PE, Mike. We got to figure this one out.
That's why I asked the question the way.
Yeah. Okay.
was stated.
Okay. Let's do this. The plans, the plans that were submitted, are they signed and sealed?
Yes.
Okay, who signed and sealed then?
That would be the president of our company, Richard Ivins.
Okay, and he's a PE, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so Mike Finelli. So the MLUL 40:55D-10E says the technical rules of evidence shall not be applicable to the hearing. There's a commentary, not in the Cox book, but there's a commentary in Frizzell, my competing author, was another book. He has a comment in his book that says the purpose, because he's older than me, so he was around, right? I was in high school when this thing was adopted.
He's a wise man, I'm sure.
He's a very wise man. He says in his book that the purpose of E was to allow a situation like we now have, where if you have a signed and sealed plan, but you don't have the PE here, the signed and sealed plan can be admitted into evidence on his own, and as long as the witness, who has an engineering degree, but he's not a PE, he can, let's say, testify not in an expert capacity. He can be a fact witness as a representative of Pure Power to describe what's happening and describe what's on the plans, but he obviously will not be able to answer any questions about the design of anything, because if he does, he'll be engaged in the unlawful practice of engineering. So that's the tightrope that we're going to be walking tonight. But in my opinion, he can testify as a fact witness and the plan can come in on its own without the person who signed and sealed it being here.
So John, basically the plan stands on its own merits.
That's correct.
Got it.
And Connor can...
and I'll add this. My computer's tending to freeze, so I'm not sure if you guys are hearing me or not.
We are.
We
We
are.
don't. Your face is frozen, but we hear you.
Now we
Now
can.
we don't. Mike, if you can hear us, you better, maybe you can call
you're
in.
back, Mike.
No, okay. It's back now.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's back. It's everybody's freezes on my screen except for me. Okay. The to Mr. Stanzione. Who's your other witness? I was shuffling around my papers there.
Our other witness, if you'd like him to speak, is Mr. Dennis Breza. He's a representative from Distributed Solar.
Distributed Solar, okay, I just wanted to confirm that. The majority of this project is an application, as we're going to hear, relates to the solar part of it. There's very little that relates to site improvements that I would be concerned that a P really would be necessary. So I take no exception to letting Connor proceed. If we get into something that we're uncomfortable with, we'll deal with it at that time. But the site improvements that a typical licensed civil engineer would testify to are very limited on this application.
Okay.
So
So-
my 2 cents for the board.
Okay, so let's also get Dennis Breza also sworn. So where is Mr. Breza?
I see him listed on the screen.
There he is. Can you unmute
Yep.
yourself, Mr. Breza? Or can someone unmute Mr. Breza?
You probably know what they're going to do. Oh, I got it. I'm muting.
Okay.
Hi,
So-
everybody. Dennis Breza here with DSD Renewables. I'm the
Right.
project development manager.
So let's have Connor, Dennis, Mike Finelli, and Beth all raise your right hand. Do all of you swear the testimony you're going to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Stanzione, go ahead.
All right. What we're here for, as our notice states, is on the existing shops at the Home Depot, number 931, located at 1209 Route US 22 in Greenwich Township. More specifically, Block 23, Lot 36. We're looking to install a rooftop solar array with modules mounted to a ballasted and/or mechanically attached racking system and supported on the rooftop of the existing building. We're looking for a
Hey,
site
hold
plan.
on, we're getting background noise from somewhere.
Yeah.
Frank, can you
Also,
identify-
John, just for the record, should we just establish that notice has been given and,
Yeah.
Bill, I'm going to mute Bill Kenya.
yeah, I've been muting Bill all night. Nothing personal, Bill. A lot of noise. Yeah, should we establish that notice has been
Yep.
given and the application's complete and so on?
So I reviewed the text of the notice and it's satisfactory. And again, I'll ask Susanna, did you review the stamped certified receipts against the tax assessor's list?
I did.
And were they all in order?
They were.
Again, Ray, my opinion is the board has jurisdiction. What's your ruling?
Yeah, absolutely. We can proceed.
All right. As I was saying, we're looking for minor site plan approval and also any variances that the board may find necessary. And with that, I know he's not testifying as an expert, so we won't worry about.
Right. You don't have to qualify him. You just have him introduce
Yeah.
himself. What does he do with Pure Power? But he's testifying as a fact witness.
Yep. Connor, you mind giving the board the benefit of what your position is at Pure Power and as a fact witness, how you're appearing today?
Sure, no problem. Hello, everyone. My name is Connor Trujillo. I'm a project manager for Pure Power Engineering, and we are the engineer of record for both the structural and electrical side of this project. As Mike said, it's a proposed rooftop solar array on the existing Home Depot building. And yeah, so I have been working with DSD Renewables for the last approximately 7 to 8 months on this project, and am very familiar with the plan set itself. Solar industry I've been working in for 9 years, and you know, can walk you through the project
All right.
in terms of.
Well, since you're appearing solely as a fact witness, Connor, I think we can go right into what the project is.
Sure.
And just, you know, give us a brief overview of what these plans that you've been working on with at Pure Power state as what we're putting on the rooftop of the Home Depot.
Right. So yeah, the building is a flat commercial rooftop, and we'll be placing approximately 1,200 solar PV modules on top of the roof. They will be tilted at a degree of 10 degrees to capture, additional sunlight. The output of the panels will be aggregated. Well, first they'll be inverted from DC to grid compatible AC power, and then they will be aggregated at an AC panel board, which will be wall mounted at ground level. It will then go to a disconnect switch that's required by the utility before interconnecting at the existing service switchgear and producing, power into the grid that way.
You say power into the grid or power into the Home Depot?
It will be into the Home Depot first. Yeah, so that's the setup.
Because this one we gotta hit. This is an important one because
sure,
the renewable energy facilities are allowed as accessory uses in the B2 zone as an accessory use, meaning it has to be incidental and accessory to the Home Depot. If this is generating power going to the grid, this is gonna need a D variance. I thought when I read the application, is this powering the Home Depot?
Yeah, so it's going into the existing service switchgear. So the power that the Home Depot consumes is like 3 times more than the PV system produces.
Okay, so
typically.
it's not going to the grid, it's going to the Home Depot.
Yeah, it's going into their service. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, their existing
Got
service.
very nervous for a second.
Mhm.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the extent of the work that's being proposed.
All right, Connor, I guess for some, now these, we received 2 letters. One was from Beth McManus, as I heard to the last application, she goes by Beth.
Right.
And the other one is from Mr. Finelli, and they both had comments that they want testimony on. And again, sticking straight to the facts of what the plans say. You want to go through those with me. We'll start with Mr. Finelli's August 5th, 2020 letter. I know we said question 1 will actually be from Mr. Brezza. He has an answer on that. Number 2 of his, page 2 of his technical review. Testimonies that relates to the height, locations, and potential screening options. I know you just went into that. But it says, to ensure the proposed improvements are not visible from public areas and nearby public streets. Based on the facts of these plans, will it be visible over the existing parapets or anything like that from the street or parking lot?
That's a question for me?
Yes.
He's asking a question for you.
Yeah, so the existing parapets at the Home Depot are approximately 3 feet on either side, and then the front of the store it's even taller, closer to 6 feet due to the signage. So the panels themselves will be less than a foot above the roof surface, so they will be below the existing parapet height in all cases, and therefore not visible from any of the streets.
So the plan shows the parapets block any visibility of the panels at the angle they're at and the height they are.
Correct.
Okay, and
Can I interrupt, Mr. Stanzione? Excuse me, but
absolutely.
That comment kind of relates to an overriding question with this application, and that's whether or not a variance was going to be necessary for panels not facing public streets. So, both Beth and I have opined in our respective reports. Are you going to address that point directly, or John?
So put it this way. You said the panels are tilted at 10%, correct?
Yeah, 10 degrees. Yeah.
10 degrees.
10 degrees. What's the closest to the roof surface that the one edge of the panel will be, and what's the furthest away from the roof surface that the other edge of the panel will be?
They'll be, the front edge will be less than an inch above the roof surface, and the highest edge will be approximately 11 inches above the
And
roof
these
surface.
things are facing south, correct?
Approximately, yeah, more or less, a little bit
And
off, but yeah.
what is south of the building? What's the nearest road?
Let me just refer to the plans here. It would be facing in the direction of Greenwich Street.
Okay, now, Beth's opinion is basically that it's a flat roof. If the panels are on a flat roof, by definition, they're not facing the street. Mike Finelli's opinion is if you can see them from the street, they're facing the street. So based on the plans and based on, I thought you said that even though the parapet height was 3 feet high, you said the front facade was higher than 3 feet? Is that what you said?
Yeah, correct. The front of the store with the Home Depot signage has additional height to it than the sides of the building.
You know what the height of the facade is in the front?
It varies, but at the highest point, it's probably about 6 feet.
Okay, so how do you know that you will not see any of the panels from the front of the building, which is Greenwood Street, correct?
Yes. Yeah, by virtue of the panels being shorter in height, as I mentioned, 11 inches above the roof, where the parapet is anywhere from 3 to 6 feet above the roof, there'd be no chance to see the panels from street level.
So Mike Finelli, does that do it for you or not?
So Mike, your concern is somebody standing at street level shouldn't be able to see this, correct? Because obviously your vantage point is everything in this type of application, but these panels would appear to be invisible from someone standing at the street level within a reasonable proximity to the front of the building.
Hey, and we've said that on multiple reports. It's just a fact of there's an ordinance condition that we've been dealing with a little bit recently. And maybe next month we have another application to that point. So just to put it on the record and have everybody comfortable and confirm that we don't believe that that section of the code relates to this application because of the flat roof, because of the parapets, because of the distance from the nearest public street. There's a lot of reasons.
I wouldn't go distance. I would go the flat roof and the height of the parapet.
Okay, just go with those two. That there is no relief, that the board is not going to seek relief from this application.
It's not even relief. It complies with the ordinance because it's a flat roof and because of the parapet.
What John just said.
Is the board comfortable with making that finding?
Is there anybody on the board, raise your hand if you're uncomfortable with that finding? Otherwise, we're not going to require relief from the street facing ordinance. I think we're good.
Okay, excuse me for butting in, but it was kind of like
Better you than me.
timely note.
No, Mr. Fernandez, that's okay. I actually had a question for number 3. We just wanted a little clarification because we went over this the other day and we weren't quite sure what the question was for number 3 of your letter.
Yeah, so Mike, it says the sonotube foundation indicated on detail 7 over E402 is recommended for the rack-mounted solar system disconnect as it is proposed outside the level pad area of the existing utility transformer and the main service disconnect, limiting soil disturbance of the proposed improvements. Now, on my memo, I just wrote condition. I don't know what it means. Can you explain to the applicant and the board what that means?
All right. I'm looking at the reduced copy of the site plan package that was submitted by the applicant on sheet
E402.
E402.
Detail 7.
Electrical details. It shows some foundations, and it shows that obviously being penetrated into whether it be mounted to concrete or penetrated into the ground. The question was, how is this particular location? How does it?
You're recommending a sonotube foundation to limit the amount of disturbance when they put their foundation in, you don't want like a poured concrete footing. You want to limit it to a sonotube, that's what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so does the applicant agree to use a sonotube concrete foundation and not, a poured concrete foundation?
Yes, agreed.
Okay, thanks.
I was just say we have a representative of the applicant too, if you need them to agree. But that was I was just I didn't know what the question was, so I had to ask.
Well, it was worded more as a statement than a question, so
Okay.
you read it right.
No, it's okay.
So number four is another recommendation. So again, the way I look at these, unless you guys say something and complain about it, if the board grants an approval, I make it a condition. So instead of it reading installation of bollards is recommended behind the curb, what the condition will be is installation of bollards is required behind the curb. So
Okay.
you guys have a problem with 4, or can we make that a condition?
As we spoke about the other day, I don't think there's a problem with 4.
Okay.
Ballards are just barriers to prevent vehicle traffic from hitting the equipment. Is that what that is, Mike?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Okay, so Connor, the applicant agrees to number 4 as a condition, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Number 5, the duct bank.
Connor, as far as number 5, I know we talked about this the other day as well. The encasement in 3,000 PSI concrete. Is that a problem?
Not a problem. Yeah, we agree to that one as well.
All right.
Okay.
How many of these are there, and are there any that you wouldn't agree to?
There's 2 more, Ray. There's only 2
Oh,
more.
go ahead, Mike. Or I'm
Yep.
sorry.
No, it's not a problem. And the answer is no, there's not any that we wouldn't agree to.
Okay, so we'll just make it condition 6, which is basically get comments from the fire chief to make sure that they're satisfied with the plan. So God forbid there's ever a fire, they have access up there and they're not going to kill themselves. And number 7 is the standard condition about making sure that you have escrow funds, because as if you couldn't read between the lines before, the board's been having some trouble with that.
Yep. Perfect.
Okay. Yep. And
Okay,
as I
Michael.
stated, I mean, we could have one of the witnesses say it, but I know we don't have a problem with any of those. So.
Well, Connor already said it. Connor, you agree to all those things, correct?
Correct, yes.
Right.
All right.
See, these guys that aren't engineers are pretty quick and to the point, Mike.
You're referring to Mike Stanzione, I'm sure, not Mike.
That's, of course he is.
Okay, thank you, John.
Yeah. Then to Beth's or Ms. McManus's memo, we had a couple things on there. I believe there's a little bit of overlap. The visibility we already addressed. And then
Really, listen, Beth's memo, it's 2.2. She says you need a rear yard setback variance. So,
which yes, we saw that in her memo. I've spoken to Connor about it. There are reasons that they picked that area. Connor, if you just want to go quickly through the factual area reasons for
so
that
first,
area
Connor,
being.
explain to the board, what is it? What type of equipment is going to be ground mounted? Where's it going to be ground mounted? What's this rear yard setback requirement in the ordinance? What does the plan show it as? Why can't you move it somewhere else? And then the board will connect the dots and they'll figure out after you finish testifying why they should grant a C1 hardship, not a C2 variance like in the last case, to allow it to be there. So go ahead.
Sure, yeah. So with regards to the equipment in question, it's a disconnect switch, an AC disconnect. It's like a handled switch, something you might see in a commercial electrical room. The reason for the location.
What's the size? Size of the disconnect switch?
Yeah, so it's about 5 feet tall and maybe 2 feet wide by 8 inches deep. It's
Connor, that's the whole area of the equipment, not just the switch.
that is, yes, that would be, well, there's 2 pieces, I guess, in the back, but only one is within the
Hold on for a second.
near the property
5
line.
foot tall by 2 foot wide by 8 inch deep. Is that a cabinet and the equipment's located in the cabinet? Or is that the equipment and it's encased in metal?
Yeah, that's the equipment, and it's just got a metal enclosure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so where is this disconnect switch? It's 5 foot tall by 2 foot wide by 8-inch deep disconnect switch. Where is it proposed to be located on the plan right now?
Right now, it's shown next to the existing service switchgear, which is in the kind of grassy area in the loading road and behind the store. So there's the utility transformer, then there's the service switchgear, which is about 6 feet by 3 feet wide and also 6 feet tall. And then we were proposing to put this disconnect switch adjacent to that gear.
Okay, that service, the service switchgear, that's already there, correct?
Yes, yeah. So there's a utility transformer and a existing building service switchgear already in this area.
Do you know how many feet from the rear yard, do you know how many feet from the rear property line the existing service gear switch is, and do you know how many feet from the rear property line this disconnect switch you're proposing is going to be?
Yeah, so they're both about 20 feet from the rear property line. So yeah, the existing gear is about that far, and we'd be putting the disconnect switch at that, same distance approximately.
Can you explain, because someone on the board is going to want to know, can't you put the disconnect switch somewhere that would comply? And if the answer is no, we can't, explain why.
Well, the answer is yes, we could. We could put it on.
Okay, but explain why it doesn't make sense to then.
Yeah, so the reason why we chose it over there is well, it's more of like an electrical reasoning. The conductors, with the way that they're interconnecting at this existing gear, you want to keep those lengths as short as possible. So the closer it is to the, as we call it, point of interconnection, the safer from an electrical standpoint, and the
So
less.
maybe this is not a C1 hardship variance. Maybe this is a C2. If you can put it somewhere else, but it's safer to put it where you're proposing, then the safety, the general welfare and safety purposes of the MLUL would be advanced.
Sounds like it's efficiency, not safety though, right?
Well, I think it's both, but I think the compelling reason for the board would be safety. Efficiency is not our concern, actually, because it's Home Depot's concern. It's the concern of solar. But safety is definitely a concern. So I would agree with John that if it would be unsafe or decrease the level of safety to have it removed to another location, then that would be a good positive criteria for that.
Any board members have a
Joe,
problem?
hang on. Joe's got a question.
No, I think he's muted.
I think I got him.
Yeah, you got me. So I see that it's right next to the existing service disconnect. Is that right? That's what that other transformer and box there is?
Correct, yes.
So it would make sense to put the two disconnects right next to each other for safety purposes to get them all off quickly.
That's what he's saying, right?
Right, okay.
And that would be C2 grounds. Forget about hardship because it could be placed somewhere else, but it's safer to place it here, C2 grounds.
There's also another issue here, isn't there, John, that the actual rear yard setback on this property is kind of messed up to begin with?
Well, that was their argument, was that the building already encroaches.
Fills the setback.
Right, and the thing could be put behind the building, but Connor has said that they can place it somewhere else where it will comply. So that argument is out the window, in my opinion. And the C2 for safety, you go to the bank with that one.
Right, but the other equipment is also.
The other equipment's already there.
And it's also
but that's
outside the setback. Right, I understand.
Yes.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, Michael, do you have? I think we covered the variance. If I'm not mistaken, John, we're going to call that a C2 variance for the purpose of promoting safety.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. I believe that covers everything in Beth's memo that we didn't already cover in Mr. Finelli's letter. Just trying to make sure. Yep, I think that's it. We also have Mr. Breza here if there are any questions. since we covered everything else that was listed, I don't really have any questions to ask him, but if the board has any questions for the applicant outside of outside of Connor's testimony, he is also available.
Okay. So I'll ask first the board and then we'll ask the public. Does anybody on the board have questions for anyone who testified on behalf of Home Depot's solar application? Besides Joe.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Joe. You already asked the question, so go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I did. Oh, we'll do the question first, but I did find one more thing we have to
No,
cover.
that's okay, Michael. Go ahead, because there might be a question about that. So.
All right. So, Mr. Brezza, I'm going to bring on now for this one because I know Connor's not the person to ask this one.
Right.
In Mr. Finelli's letter on page 2, number 1, we shall provide applicant shall provide testimony summarizing the anticipated total energy collection and efficiency of the proposed ballasted roof-mounted solar arrays as it compares to the average energy consumption demands of the existing Home Depot building.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yep.
So,
So, Mr. Brezza, could you introduce yourself first to the board? Who do you work for? What do you do? Again, you're not an expert, you're a fact witness, but give them some idea of what you do and what you know, so then they could have some, reliability when you're testifying.
Sure, Jonathan, no problem. My name is Dennis Brezza. I'm a project development manager with DSD. I've been in solar with Tesla and Solar City prior to this for the last 10 to 12 years. I also have a civil engineering degree, so I do have some experience in the field. To answer the question,
right.
The roof-mounted solar array is expected to produce around 570 megawatt hours per year, which is about 2 to 3 times, which is less than what Home Depot, this building particularly uses. This building uses about 2 to 3 times more energy on a yearly basis. So they'll continue to receive energy from the utility grid. However, our inverters rely on voltage from the grid in order to operate, hence the reason why Connor mentioned that it's grid-tied system.
Okay. But it's tied to the grid with the electric flowing from the grid into the system, not from your system into the grid. Is that correct?
That's accurate. And if the grid goes down, the inverters shut off. So there's safety mechanisms in place that would shut off the system if ever the grid were to go down.
And if there's a fire there and the fire company has to come out. So we see on the plans that you have like pathways so the firefighters can fight a fire there, but how do they get up on the roof? Do they have to use, in other words, a ladder truck, or do you have, ladders for them to climb?
Yeah, we don't install anything specific for accessibility to the roof. We would use the same methods as the fire department would. I mean, yeah, they would use a ladder truck because it's quicker, but we'll just use any access, roof access that they have in order to do our work.
Once your system's up and running, do you contact the fire department and try to coordinate and let them come out and see what it's like so they're not seeing it for the first time if there's a fire?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Some jurisdictions require us to go through fire approval, which is obviously what we're agreeing to here. We'll meet with your fire department and ensure that they approve of our plans. Home Depot requires usually more than ample distance for the fire lanes. We have 15-foot fire lanes, and Connor obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but also additionally 8-foot walkways. You can see on the overhead view, there's a couple other buildings there that also have solar, and you'll notice that our particular array configuration actually exceeds what's already on site at those other locations.
Okay, Ray, I got nothing further.
Okay. So Dennis, if the power goes out, the solar goes out too in your case. Is that what I heard you say?
That's right.
Kind of strange, but
I find that kind of funny, actually.
Yeah.
But I get it. You have to run inverting equipment, and then what circuits do you power and which ones don't, and so on. So very good. So Does anybody else have any questions for any of the applicants? I don't.
I'll
Go
still
ahead,
pose-
Joe.
I'll still pose my question. So that answered most of my questions, but I'm finding it interesting that there's never a time that this system's delivering power to the grid. Surely at noon on the peak days, is it not producing more than the store is using?
That's a good question. It really depends on the usage of the store. I mean, our highest producing time of the year is during summer solstice. And usually the building is producing more power than what we're producing. They're utilizing more power than what we're producing. I'm sure there could be an instance where the building is shut down for a day and the solar is still producing. That's why we net meter the facility. And it's agreement that we have with the utility company that at the end of the year, whatever net is left over from the production will offset the bill. So it's not as though we're selling any additional power to the grid or remotely net metering or even doing community solar. It's not that case. It's strictly for the building itself.
So in summer solstice, it's June, correct?
June 21st.
June 21st.
That's what I thought. So I would imagine Home Depot's air conditioners are running at a pretty good clip at that point. I don't think your solar panels are keeping up with the air conditioning that entire building. Just my guess.
I tend to agree with that. Yeah, but there's always the off case for some reason. I don't know, they shut down.
Okay, so
Can I ask one more question? This is
That's
a
one.
curiosity question.
So you're going to ask two?
If the southern face edge of the panel is 1 inch off the roof, what happens when it snows?
Yeah, so the snow covers the solar panels typically, and then eventually it melts away. So during those times, no power will be produced if the panels are fully covered.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board or professionals? Going once, going twice? Okay, if anybody from the public has questions for these applicants or comments on this application, raise your hand, please.
Bill and Doris, you got anything?
No.
How about Matt Gabor? Can you unmute him, Frank?
Yep, unmuting.
He just muted himself again.
Well, I unmuted him.
Well, I was gonna say Matt's from he's from.
He's
DSD.
unmuted.
Matt, you're with the applicant?
I am.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, he's just listening.
All right.
So I think we've covered it. If there's no further questions from the board or from the public, then I think it's time to go to the board and ask for a motion to approve the application. John, do you want to just summarize quickly, because you already have this resolution? So
Yeah,
we're going to have to do two things. We're going to have to approve it, and then we're going to have to approve the resolution,
Yeah,
which
I'm
was sent
I'm
out
gonna
to
have-
everybody in advance. So why don't you
Right.
explain that real quick so we can.
Yeah. So the application itself is for a minor site plan approval. And again, I'm going to say in this application what I said in the last one, which is when you have a site plan application in front of you, you take a look at the application and you ask, does it comply with all the zoning regulations? And does it comply with all the site plan requirements? In this case, it complies with everything except there's a rear yard encroachment for that piece of equipment. If the board says that, you know what, we're going to grant a C variance, a C2 variance, because safety will be enhanced if we grant the variance to allow that piece of equipment to be next to the existing switch because it's safer, then you look, okay, are there any other zoning regulations or site plan requirements that aren't satisfied? In this case, no, they're all satisfied. So you would grant the C2 and grant the minor site plan approval. Now, I went out on a limb because I thought this was totally conforming. I did not realize there was the rear yard encroachment. So I had first done a resolution fully compliant. Then when I found out about the rear yard encroachment, I figured, in for a dime, in for a dollar. I already did the resolution, so I added a paragraph. Now I had it set up as a C1, but I can do a game day change on this. Instead of granting a C1, you've already heard the reasons for the C2. So if you voted to approve the application, you would say, I'm going to vote to approve the application subject to the conditions which I've already outlined in the resolution. After that vote, assuming it's yes, then I will ask you to do a separate motion to adopt this resolution, subject to me making revisions in it, which I'll make. And then I'm going to suggest in this application, just like in the last one, or those two resolutions you did, that you adopt it, but you tell the secretary not to sign it until we're sure that there's enough escrow in the escrow account. And once that's ascertained, then she signs it and they're off to the races. So did I complicate things, Ray, or did I explain everything?
I think you've explained it, but so we have to vote twice, once on
the approval,
once on the
once on the
C2,
memorial.
and once on the site plan.
No, one vote, one motion for the C2 and the site plan, then a separate motion to adopt this
Oh, okay,
resolution.
okay. I thought you were
memorializing-
splitting up the bulk and okay. So I'll ask for a motion on the site plan and C2 to
Motion.
approve. Thank you, Mark. Any second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe.
Keep second.
Roll call?
Paul Beam,
Yes.
Joseph Ticello,
Yes.
Frank Marchetta,
Yes.
Ray Buckwalter,
Yes.
Bruce Williams,
Yes.
Kathy Cullen,
Yes.
Don Marie Condes,
Yes.
Mark Scuderi,
Yes.
and Joseph Fiamma.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. Now John already has the resolution written. It's subject to the conditions that we already talked about, changing C1 to C2. So
Right.
now we need a
motion
to approve the
adopt
resolution or to adopt.
2020-04 with the revisions we discussed.
Motion.
Second.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Bruce. Okay, roll call.
Paul Beam,
Yes.
Joseph Ticello,
Yes.
Frank Marchetta,
Yes.
Ray Buckwalter,
Yes.
Bruce Williams,
Yes.
Kathy Cullen,
Yes.
Don Marie Condes,
Yes.
Mark Scuderi,
Yes.
and Joseph Fiamma.
Yes.
Okay, so that carries. And Susanna, we just instruct you not to sign off on the resolution until we know that the escrow accounts are covered.
Right, right.
Okay? And I think
Thank
that
you.
concludes this piece of business. And what time is it? Beth, how much time do you need to go over the changes to the solar or the proposed
Ray, it's only
changes?
10 o'clock. The
Pardon?
night is young. It's only 10 o'clock. The night is young.
You are beautiful, John.
You are now the most unpopular person in Greenwich Township.
Hey, John's going pro bono from now on.
I like it.
Well, he's home. When he had an hour drive, he was.
When there was an hour drive, I was like, what are you guys, nuts? We got to adjourn this meeting.
All right.
We have so much time. It shouldn't take any less than like 3 or 4 hours. No reason why we can't get it done tonight.
All right. Well, I think we have this solar application coming up, and my understanding is the timing on this thing. If we concluded to make changes, and it would impact a pending application, it's probably not going to help them much anyway, because then it has to go to the township committee, and then it has to go through 2 readings. Correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and it's already incomplete before they can take advantage of it. So
Yeah. So they could choose to wait like 4 months, or they can follow the normal process and ask for relief. Okay. So why don't we go ahead, Beth? I'll hand the floor over to you, and you can give us a quick recap. I think we got stuck last time on this this terminology of geez, now I'm forgetting the exact words you used, but
building an integrated system.
the integrated system, correct?
By the way, Ray, you might want to tell these other guys that you will not be insulted if they want to leave. I think they're all sticking around, but they don't want you guys.
No, I was actually going to make
gonna
them
tell
sit
them.
through this.
I was going to tell them that I was going to thank the board and say I have to go put a 3-year-old to bed. If she's not already, she's in trouble.
Michael, thank you and your team,
Thank you.
Connor and Dennis.
Thank you.
Don't forget
you're,
Matt.
you're off the hook.
Yeah.
All right, great. Have a good night, everyone.
For the
All right,
future,
take care.
guys, for the
Good night.
future, it's Greenwich, not Greenwich.
Yeah.
Oh,
Greenwich.
Uh,
Leave the
All right.
green in Greenwich.
Yeah.
thanks, everyone.
Wow, everybody just got bigger.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
All right, now that it's just us. So I updated the solar ordinance that we talked about last month. Folks, the last ordinance I did was pretty simple. It basically required that if you're going to put solar panels on the front of a building, that you had to use a building integrated system, which is, to put simply, it's basically the solar shingles. You know, it also includes other types of technology like photovoltaic glass, but the most common, and I think what you guys are going to see in the short term, is potentially the solar shingles. So we reviewed the ordinance, but folks were still a little uncomfortable. You wanted, the direction I was given is that you wanted some more assurance that the building integrated system that would be placed on a roof would indeed would be more consistent with what a typical roof looks like. There is not a consensus that folks are comfortable seeing and being able to recognize solar panels from the street. And so what I've done here is revise the ordinance to provide additional standards to do a couple things. So one, we kept that if you're going to place solar within or on a part of the building that's visible to the public street, it does indeed have to be the building integrated solar, so that remains. I also required that the system be, quote, indistinguishable or very similar in appearance to the building envelope system to which it applies. For example, solar roof materials shall be indistinguishable or very similar in appearance to conventional roofing materials. So if you think about some of the photos and the examples we reviewed last month, I think it's pretty easy to tell apart the solar shingles versus a solar panel. And so requiring that any new solar or photovoltaic material that somebody is going to use, it essentially has to appear indistinguishable. It has to appear to sort of to the untrained eye to be a typical conventional building material. The last component, the last standard that I added to the ordinance is it requires that the system, the building integrated system, or so that system or an indistinguishable material be installed on all portions of the applicable building envelope which faces the public street. And so what that really means is if you have, let's say you only need or can only cover 50% of your roof that faces the public street with solar panels, you are required pursuant to this ordinance to either cover the entire roof with the solar panels or to apply another building material or maybe deactivated solar panels. The ordinance doesn't specify, it's up to the homeowner to work that out. But to cover the remaining portion of the roof, the part that may be unnecessary, with a building material that is indistinguishable from the solar material, which has to be indistinguishable from the conventional roof. It also goes on to state that this applies to not only and this is me paraphrasing and trying to break down the ordinance, but the ordinance goes on to state that the requirement doesn't just apply to the large uninterrupted area of like a rectangle or a box that you can draw on your roof. It has to include all of the smaller areas. So if you think about all the protrusions that we might have in our roofs, whether it's vent pipes or chimneys or any other architectural details that you might have, that means that you've got to pull this solar panel or this complementary material right up to and around those pipes, chimneys, architectural details, etc. So if you remember some of the photographs that we reviewed last month, there were homes that had the solar roof, and it was just sort of this black box in the middle of the roof line, versus the others where it created this uniform, not uniform because it looked like shingles, but the roof was uniformly covered in the solar material or something designed to be complementary to that solar material, both in terms of color, but also general materials, you know, so it looked like part of the single system. And so, so for example, I state where the building integrated system is a roof mounted solar structure, which again, I think is going to be your most common application. This shall apply to the entire applicable roof, flashing on the applicable roofs and any other trim, but it shall not apply to gutters, chimneys, or other structures mounted to or adjacent to the roof. So, you know, it means that the zoning officer should have some guidance that, in case he's wondering, you know, folks are not required to somehow find a solar generating gutter. There is a line that we draw, and it's really specific to the roof. It's not anything attached to the roof that has to have this material. One other component is pursuant to the board's direction, you guys are you had asked me to write an ordinance that would require that regardless of again what portion of the roof was actually necessary or permitted to be covered in solar, you want that same material applying to not only that roof that faces that street, but any other, I keep using roof because that's the most common example, but in any other roof that also faces the same public street. So where somebody has a single family home, this means, and they're placing solar, this means that their entire roof facing the public street, including around all of the protrusions, has got to consist of this material. But it means that they also have a detached garage. You're also requiring that they go ahead and purchase and apply the materials to that detached garage as well, notwithstanding that it's part of a separate structure. And so the ordinance has been revised to accommodate that direction, or to write out the direction that I received from you guys. And I'm interested in any comments if folks are prepared to make those tonight.
Okay, discussion.
How easily is this interpreted by the zoning officer? Do you think it's something that is, I'm just worried about that aspect of it, of the interpretation of it.
I mean, look, the language that I've got to use is indistinguishable or very similar in appearance. There are going to be a lot of examples that are easily going to be found in compliance, and a lot of examples that are going to be easily found out of compliance. Like, for example, if somebody is doing a black solar shingle and they're just going to apply black asphalt shingles adjacent to it, I think that's very easily going to be found to be non-compliant. But is there going to be some gray area? That's very possible, because, you know, we're not in a position to be able to cite specific materials or a specific brand. I mean, I could provide guidance to the zoning officer through some of the photographs, you know, like a handful of photographs that would help illustrate compliance with the ordinance, but there are some limitations in the type of language and the specificity that we can do, in part because the technology is still coming along.
I'm not against, you know, creating the ordinance, but, you know, right now it's a lot easier for us to make a decision as a group versus one person trying to interpret everything based on this new ordinance. So now they have to come for a variance, and we discuss it amongst the board for the variance. We're going to now, I guess, switch that decision-making over to the zoning officer. But, you know, I mean, it is what it is.
I mean, John, I don't know if you disagree, but I think that if the zoning officer, especially, I mean, at any point really, but especially in the beginning where maybe he's got some applications, he's not sure if these work, I think he's able to reach out to me for help and guidance as the author of the ordinance.
We've had the zoning officer refer things to the board in the past for interpretation.
Yep.
And I think that's an option, and we may want to encourage him to do that if he's at all unsure. But Frank, I understand what you're saying, because, you know, especially when we first, if this went to the township committee and if we decided to change it, when it first changes, you know, the zoning officer's going to need some sort of a
Listen, anything that's
primer.
new, that happens with anything that's
Right.
new.
Yeah.
And I'm going to interrupt for a second. Larry and I have already been discussing this portion that you're all discussing right now. So he's kind of aware that we're making a change with architecturally styled solar and stuff like that. So he's not completely in the dark on the subject matter.
Is he the only one we're talking about, though?
That's it.
What's that?
Right. I mean, weren't there other systems that were there was the state agency that was approving some of this stuff?
Well, that problem's been fixed.
Yeah, and that was not, they were not approving building integrated solar. They were just approving typical panels.
Panels, right? That problem's been solved.
So they won't be involved with.
No, well, they're going.
The problem was
it's required they'll be involved, but
One
they
at a
don't
time?
until zoning.
they were not waiting for a zoning permit to be issued. It's a totally separate issue.
Okay.
Right.
So Larry would still have been involved, or should still have been involved in those cases.
That's correct.
Yeah, Beth, no, I like what you've done, and I think it captures, you know, what we were discussing, you know, kind of things. I think that indistinguishable is kind of a subjective word, you know, but I can't think of any way around it. But going back to what Frank was saying, I mean, we're not getting many solar applications just because the process of doing a variance to do it just makes it so it doesn't make much sense.
Mhm.
So I think this at least allows, you know, an avenue for people to go forward to do, you know, street facing solar, you know, but, you know, that's got to be a good one.
Yeah, I don't know if
I
it would
think
be,
that also raises another concern, you know, for me, about what this ordinance looks like, that you have to have a lot of money or are willing to put, you know, a lot of money into a new roof or really tear down another roof versus somebody that doesn't. So you have a lot of money, you don't have to come before this board. And to put it in, you know, probably a very poor term, it's kind of like, if you have an Acura, you can park on the street. But if you got a Toyota, you got to come before the board for permission to park on the
but
street.
the alternative, Jeremy, is they have to come through the board anyway.
Not if they're putting the not if they're going to spend all the money for this integrated.
No, Jeremy,
system that you're talking
this gives anyone the opportunity to put a street-facing solar on their house. And granted, that's probably more expensive today than the older style panels. But the same person who, you know, doesn't have the money to do that would still have to go through the variance process to put street-facing solar on their house, which is probably
well, it
more
certainly
expensive.
would, but again, I just feel like that creates a, I don't know, I hate to use the word an inequality. That's probably not the case there, but you know, say you just don't have that money. Now you want to put something because say you want to be, I don't know, clean energy, maybe not clean energy, but save money, protect against future energy costs. You can't afford however much money this is, but now you got to shell out $3,300 to come before the board. I just don't like the optics of that.
That's the way it is now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But if we put this ordinance in, now we're creating a top tier.
Well,
We're
I mean, there's a
creating
lot.
another
I
tier of
think if
individuals.
you looked at a lot of the ordinances that we have in the town that apply to aesthetics, I mean, you have to mow your lawn. I mean, that costs money. You have to. There's all types of things that we have that, to some degree, could be couched that way. I understand what you're saying, but our intent isn't.
I know. I just
create a
don't
club.
like the
It's to-
optics of it.
Yeah.
I do want to, and I want to be neutral on this topic for you guys, but I do also want to point out that one of the aspects of this that could potentially cause an additional cost for somebody without a benefit is that you're also requiring that same material to be applied on other roofs that might face the same street. So again, it is gonna improve the aesthetics of the project. I think that's unquestionable, but the reality is that in order to have a variance-free application, you're requiring that the material or some indistinguishable material to it also apply to other roofs for which there may be no solar power generated.
I mean, I can't speak for this particular type of technology because time will tell, but if this follows the path that everything else does, it will become very affordable
Oh, yeah.
in some short period of time as it becomes more and more popular.
We have somebody with their hand up that says an FYI. I don't know. I'll just let you.
Biami wants to talk.
You tell me if you want me to let him talk.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm on mute.
Joe, talk.
Okay, thank you. My name is Joe Landesino. I am the permit coordinator for SunPower Solar. I was actually listening to your meeting from last month regarding the solar issue that you're talking about right now. I was just wondering, this new variance proposal that you are.
It's not a variance proposal. It's a new ordinance proposal to eliminate a variance.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just wondering, will this also pertain to, I guess, the regular solar panels that you normally would see as compared to the solar shingles?
No.
The ordinance doesn't directly address conventional solar panels. It carves out a way for a property owner to place some type of, or to rather place a specific type of building integrated solar on a roof that faces a public road, where right now that is totally prohibited and requires variance relief. So this opens up the township's ordinance to provide some more flexibility, but only to that particular material.
To only solar shingles is what you're referring to, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's not literally just solar shingles. It's a building integrated solar system, but the most common application of that right now is solar shingles.
Okay, yes, because my company, we do not do the solar shingles as of yet. We are still doing the, I guess you could say, the retro style panels that you normally see on houses. So I was just kind of curious, like, how this was going to apply to that kind of solar system as compared to the newer ones that are now coming out with other companies.
Yeah, this doesn't change the requirements for what I've referred to as a conventional solar panel.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Can I also ask you to spell your last name for me, please?
It's Landesino, Landicino. I-N-O.
I-N-O. And what company are you with?
With SunPower.
SunPower. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion, comments? John says it's early, so I can stay here all night. Pam? The little yellow box is skipping all over the screen, but it doesn't
I
sound
know.
like we have any more comments, so.
Joe's lighting up, Pam's lighting up.
Or do you guys want to give direction to pass it on, or do you want to sit on it for another month and revisit it?
I mean, I can't think of any way to improve it, per se. So I think that we ought to basically vote to recommend it to the township committee. I think that's the next step.
Great.
Do we need a motion for that, John, or do we just?
Mike Finelli is looking to say something.
You make a motion to direct your board secretary to send it on with a recommendation.
I'll make that motion.
Mike, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, to Bruce's comment, we're going to see it again anyway, correct, John?
Yeah.
So we're gonna have another shot at looking at this, tweaking it, or whatever. So we'll have time to think, and maybe you'll be able to come up with some minor improvement.
This
when
is,
it comes back.
I haven't said much. This is a really good ordinance. The way
Well, you got to cut him a check now, Beth.
Yeah, what that cost you, Beth?
Yeah, here, just keep tonight.
All right.
Excuse me. and
So
don't- excuse me.
I'll ask for a motion.
Dawn Marie, excuse me.
Oh, Joe?
Dawn Marie.
Dawn's trying to talk.
Dawn Marie.
Hey, Dawn.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I think this is a good start, and I do think it's going to evolve, you know, as we get more questions and as we as our zoning officer sees more things out there, he may also make some recommendations to tweak it as we go down the road with some real life examples.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, the technology is going to continue to, like, Beth said, there's solar glass, there's probably other applications, so we'll see other things, I'm sure, in the future.
We
But
won't get our only chance to do something, but I think we have to start someplace, and I think this is a good place to start.
yeah, I agree. If we sit on our hands until the technology's resolved, we'll be doing this in 2050.
Maybe useful.
All right. So, does anybody else have any comments before I ask for a motion?
I think I made that motion already.
You did? All right. How about a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call.
Paul Beam,
Yes.
Joseph Chitello,
Yes.
Frank Marchetta,
Yes.
Ray Buckwalter,
Yes.
Bruce Williams,
Yes.
Kathy Colon,
Yes.
Don Marie Condes,
Yes.
Mark Scuderi,
Yes.
and Joseph Yama.
Yes.
Very good.
Susanna,
Motion
that's a
carries.
letter. I'll review it if you send it to me. It's going to be a letter to the township mayor and township committee with a copy of this last draft of the ordinance with a recommendation from the land use board that they introduce it and adopt it.
Okay.
From a housekeeping standpoint, Frank, I guess where I haven't been following any kind of press releases or notices from the town, but I guess we're going to continue to do these meetings remotely, at least for the near future, correct?
Until the governor rescinds the state of emergency.
Okay. So, yeah, yeah, perfect. One of the things I noticed tonight when the speakers were speaking, if anybody had background noise, the picture kept changing. So if somebody was testifying, other people's things kept flashing up. So Frank, that's why I was like, I was muting Bill and some other people here and there just to try to allow whoever was speaking not to have these other video
No, that's
images
fine.
flashing up.
Me and Kathy were trying to figure out why I unmuted her. She kept going back on mute. So.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't trying to be rude to like Bill or anybody, but I was trying to give the speaker the floor, and it seemed like if you have background noise. So my point is that if we can be careful about background noise if we're going to do these meetings, I mean, that's why I wear this goofy headset. I know it's like goofy, but at the end of the day, it does pretty much eliminate the background noise, and then you don't have that problem. So.
Yeah.
We'll get really good at this, and then we won't have to do it anymore. But
yeah.
Yeah.
Are you looking to adjourn? Is that the next thing?
I think a motion to adjourn is appropriate.
Before you do that, just one quick comment. Recently, Greenwich lost a prominent member of our community who had served on the land use board as vice chair. I know that, but maybe even as chair, Mike might know. Doris Reyna.
Yeah.
She's very prominent member. She could.
Doris passed away?
Yeah.
She was the chair of the land use board, I think, when I started out on.
She was the chair for quite a few years.
Yep. She was also, she was one of the first, if not the first, to preserve her farm in the township. She served on Historical Society for many years. I think she's a member of the Grange. So just want to offer my condolences to her family and acknowledge her contributions to the township, especially to this board.
She's a very, very nice lady, and that's very sad, but she does have a road named after her, which is nice already. And when did she pass away, Frank? I didn't hear.
When was it, Dormery?
Monday night.
She was the
just
first to
3
preserve,
days ago,
she was
just
the
this
first
week.
to preserve the farm.
Yeah.
One of the, if not the first to preserve her farm, yeah. It's the farm along the Greenwich Street across from the park, right? Is that the one, Mike?
No, well, it's across from the park, but it's one property in from the first park.
That one, yeah. That one's Reinhardt, right? Is that what it is?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Santini now, but yeah, it was Reinhardt.
Right.
She was my neighbor, like 60 acres away. She was back my home.
Wow.
Okay. So I had to say
Sorry to
thanks.
hear that, but thanks, Frank. Yeah, I remember Doris was, I think she was chairman of the land use board back when I first started on the zoning board, which is over 20
Yeah, I had
years
the
ago.
pleasure of serving with her.
But,
So,
hey, Ray, get
Time
it
flies when you're having
straight.
fun.
She was the chairman of the planning board.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, planning board. Yes,
Come on.
I stand corrected. I stand corrected.
Taking lessons from me.
Please, no.
Don't let it happen.
All right, let's have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make it
Motion.
to adjourn.
Okay, Frank's got the motion, Joe's got the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Good night, everybody.
All right.
Good
Don't
night.
forget to
Good
save
night.
the recording,
Joe.
Susanna.
See you tomorrow,
Yeah.
Joe.